All right. Good morning. It is currently 10:59 a.m. and of course today's date is the 21st of July 2025. How are you doing? Good morning. God is the greatest. America is the greatest nation on the face of the earth. It is your boy Genesis, and you are currently tuned into the Genesis show. Welcome back. Yes, we are back this beautiful morning, Monday morning. Okay, so we're going to check out the update on the Obama administration concerning the Russia hoax. And of course, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, declassifies some of the information concerning the Russia hoax, and she's calling it the Russia hoax files. And of course, the Trump administration is like, there has to be some sort of prosecution for the former FBI director and so many people involved in that situation. Of course, the former FBI director, James Comey, definitely had his whatever debacle he had going on when he saw the seashells on the beach. According to him, he said he saw the seashells already on the beach, and it says 8647. According to James Comey, ladies and gentlemen, he said he saw it with his wife, or his wife saw it and then she called him. I mean, who knows, ladies and gentlemen? Nobody knows. But this is much more complicated than what happened with whatever seashells he saw on the beach. This is the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, saying that the Russia hoax was definitely a big scam, and that Russia, in fact, was not trying to influence the election in 2016, and that the Obama administration in fact had some sort of update on that, and then they did not release it to the American people because I don't know, maybe they don't want Donald J. Trump to be the 45th president of the United States at the time in 2016, but eventually he won the election. And they're saying same thing sort of kind of happened in 2020 as well. Look, a lot is going on, okay? We've seen what happened with the Epstein files, like I call it. Of course, his name is Jeffrey Epstein, but I call him Jepstein. So with the Epstein files, we're still waiting for so many update on that, which is for the transparency that the American people deserve. However, this has come out to the light, and now everybody is concerned and focused on this declassification of document by the Director of Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, and it's getting a lot of, uh, I would say, primetime news. But of course, CNN, they haven't said anything about this Russia hoax. But of course, Fox News is going hard on it. And of course, CNN is going hard on the Epstein files. It's, the usual is what we expect from Fox and from CNN. But today, this morning, we're going to be checking out what is going on with the declassified document from the Obama administration by the Director of National Intelligence. And then we're also going to see the DHS Secretary, Secretary Christy Noem. She also has some update this morning, as well as the Secretary of Defense, um, the man, the myth, the legend, Pete Hegseth. A lot of people like Pete Hegseth, even though he went through a hard time getting confirmed because of his past history, but now he is the Secretary of Defense, and um, the president, the 45th, now the 47th president of the United States, President Donald J. Trump, calls him the Secretary of War. But before we go into talking about DHS Secretary and the Secretary of War, we're going to check out the update on the administration of Obama concerning the Russia hoax. Here we go.
House Oversight and Accountability Committees. Tulsi Gabbard obviously was a member of Congress. She's now director of national intelligence. Democrats are saying that her accusations are baseless. What do you say, Congressman?
Well, Tulsi Gabbard was a Democratic member of Congress, John, and she has grave concerns, as do I, because there's no evidence at all that there was any collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. That's number one. Number two, there's mounting evidence now, John, that the Obama administration was using, and his cabinet members and some in the intelligence community were using the full weight of the United States government to help Hillary Clinton and impede President Trump's campaign. That is a egregious violation of the Hatch Act, and it is potentially criminal. So we need to dig further to find out. Here's something the Democrats should really value: the truth.
She calls it an attempted coup against President Trump, 45, in his first term. Is that overstating it, or do you think that's actually what went on here?
John, that might be accurate. There's certain things that I can share with you, there's certain things I can't, because I do sit on the Intelligence Committee, but there are grave concerns that I have. And the more that I look into it and the more that we find, it's alarming. And this is potentially Watergate-esque. It's that big of a deal.
So you say the more we look into it, this is going to continue to be a front burner item, you think?
I do think so. Yes, I do, John.
All right. Let's move on to another topic. The Doge cuts. The Doge contract and aid program cuts amount to almost $2 billion right now. Is there more to come? And what do you think about the job that the Doge group has done?
I thought they did a fabulous job, and I sit on the Doge subcommittee for oversight. And you have to look at the potential savings is in the hundreds of billions of dollars, fraud, waste, and abuse, and more efficiencies. And what we found, for instance, is in savings, we don't need a $784 million brand new embassy in South Sudan. The fact that just in the Department of Education, there were 89 contracts canceled, John, that saved $881 million. There were 748 leases that were canceled that saved $660 million. And you saw in the rescissions package, we have finally defunded PBS and NPR. And I'm very proud of the fact that I was one of the members that were on the forefront of that effort. And we saved the American taxpayers $1.1 billion instead of funding propaganda wing of the Democratic Party.
Okay, there are about $8 billion worth of foreign assistance program cuts. A lot of people say, hey, that's going to reduce America's ability to sort of project influence around the world. What do you say?
I'd say, yeah, on the surface, I could understand why somebody would say that. But then when you dig, you check under the hood and you see how that money was spent. When you're spending it on DEI programs in other nations, when you're spending it on operas, like DEI operas and transgender training, like in South America, that's not furthering American goals. I think it's impeding it. I think we're regressing in that regard. So we do need to challenge the Chinese Belt and Road initiatives, but we need to be doing that by building bridges and roads and infrastructure and computing for our allies in the developing world. We don't need to be doing it on force feeding them left wing progressive drivel.
Yeah, how did we reach this point where some of these programs, the kind that you mentioned, are getting funded by U.S. taxpayers or by borrowing money from, say, China?
Honestly, it was a deep state thing where people weren't paying attention. There wasn't proper oversight. You were trusting bureaucrats I don't want federal employees to be Democrats or Republicans. That's what they do in their own time. I want them, while they're working for the federal government, to be Americans and do what's in the best interest of our nation. And it became increasingly politicized. I think it's in so many of these agencies, 96% of the people that were donating money, federal workers, were donating it to the Democrats. And that's unfortunate. And we have to protect, I'm on the Armed Services Committee as well, protect the politicization of the military, because we saw even General Milley sit there and use left-wing talking points when he was testifying in front of Congress. We have to put a stop to that.
Yeah, one of the few jobs enumerated for the federal government in the Constitution is protection of the people. Let's make sure we do that.
Yes, NPR, PBS is going through a lot, and sometimes you could call it defunding, but yeah, for sure, PBS and NPR. Anyway, Tulsi Gabbard speaks right here. Here we go.
And we begin this Sunday morning with the biggest political scandal of all: collusion and conspiracy at the highest levels against President Trump. Now, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard revealing what this audience has known all along: a cabal of high-ranking officials led by then-President Barack Obama, CIA Director John Brennan, and Hillary Clinton, among others, took the world on a wild goose chase to try and take down their political enemy, Donald Trump, no matter the casualties along the way. DNA Tulsi Gabbard is now calling for prosecutions, revealing declassified documents from the Russia collusion made-up investigation, which she says detail a treasonous conspiracy by officials at the highest level of the Obama White House to stop incoming President Donald Trump. The cabal included Barack Obama, John Brennan, James Clapper, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, Jim Comey, and Susan Rice, who pushed a made-up story that President Trump colluded with Russia to win the 2016 election, so the cabal would not lose their grip on power. All of this exactly as then Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes, Judiciary Committee member John Ratcliffe, and President Trump himself told us so many times from day one.
What that is it's the original intelligence, the original reasons that the counterintelligence investigation was started. Now, this is really important to us because a counterintelligence investigation uses the tools of our intelligence services that are not supposed to be used on American citizens. So we've long wanted to know, well, what intelligence did you have that actually led to this investigation? So what we found now, after the investigators have reviewed it, is that, in fact, there was no intelligence.
As a former federal prosecutor, my opinion is that declassifying them would not expose any national security information, would not expose any sources and methods. It would expose certain folks at the Obama Justice Department and FBI and their actions taken to conceal material facts from the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court.
How involved was John Brennan?
Totally involved. He was totally involved. John Brennan was one of the architects, in my opinion. You look at Brennan, you look at Clapper, you look at them all. But ultimately, the president knew everything. The president knew everything. President Obama and Vice President Biden, they knew everything.
And Comey and Brennan and Clapper, they all were terrible, and they lied to Congress. They spied on my campaign, which is treason. They spied both before and after I won.
Joining me now is the woman herself, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. Director, thanks very much for being here this morning.
Good morning, Maria. Thank you.
What was the most damning thing that you learned after looking through all of these declassified documents?
Maria, the implications of this are frankly nothing short of historic. Over 100 documents that we released on Friday really detail and provide evidence of how this treasonous conspiracy was directed by President Obama just weeks before he was due to leave office, after President Trump had already gotten elected. This is not a Democrat or Republican issue. This is an issue that is so serious it should concern every single American because it has to do with the integrity of our democratic republic. What we saw occur here, as the documents we released detailed, was that we had a sitting president of the United States and his cabinet and leadership team, quite frankly, who were not happy with the fact that President Trump had won the election, that the American people had chosen Donald J. Trump to be the next president, commander-in-chief of the United States. And so they decided that they would do everything possible to try to undermine his ability to do what voters tasked President Trump to do. So creating this piece of manufactured intelligence that claims that Russia had helped Donald Trump get elected, contradicted every other assessment that had been made previously in the months leading up to the election that said exactly the opposite, that Russia had neither the intent nor the capability to try to, quote unquote, hack the United States election for the presidency of the United States. So the effect of what President Obama and his senior national security team did was subvert the will of the American people, undermining our democratic republic, and enacting what would be essentially a years-long coup against President Trump, who was duly elected by the American people.
Yeah. I want to go back to something Devin Nunes said, which is exactly what you're saying right now. And he said, after all of our investigation, we found that there was no intelligence. There was no intelligence actually indicating that Trump colluded with Russia. And what happened? Because there was a presidential daily briefing that was presented to President Obama every day. And every day it said the same thing. We have no evidence of collusion. We have no evidence that Russia did this with Donald Trump. So what happened? How did they actually get the public to believe, and half the public believed, that actually Trump did collude?
Well, this is the thing, Maria, when you look at the assessments that were made, not just by one element of the intelligence community, but in my role as the Director of National Intelligence, I oversee 18 different intelligence community elements. And in the months leading up to the November 2016 election, the intelligence community agreed that there was no intelligence that reflected that Russia was trying to hack the election in favor of either candidate. The evidence showed, the intelligence showed that, again, Russia did not have either the intent nor the capability to be able to impact the outcome of the United States election. So it was very striking when we look back again at the documents that I declassified and released that shows there was a shift in early December, the first week of December. Again, another document was produced by the intelligence community, a president's daily brief that was consistent with every other assessment that was done previously leading up to the election. Russia did not, this is after the election now, did not attempt to affect the outcome of the American election. That was never published. Hours before it would have gone into President Obama's President's Daily Brief, it was pulled by a senior level intelligence official saying that they had to pull it because they had received new guidance. The very next day, this meeting was called, a National Security Council meeting, bringing together all of the senior leaders of President Obama's cabinet, and the topic that was put forward was a sensitive matter. The tasks that came out of that meeting was coming from President Obama directing the intelligence community, then Obama's ODNI director Clapper, to produce a document, to produce an intelligence assessment that detailed not if, but how Moscow affected the outcome of the election that had already occurred, electing Donald Trump to the presidency. This document that they published in January of 2017 was the foundational groundwork that they continued to reference over and over and over again to enact this years-long coup against President Trump.
Now, I know that Devin Nunes came out with the Nunes report and a lot of other reports after that to indicate everything that you're saying. And I guess the worst of the reports, the real evidence, is the reports of most recent, right? The last reports are the worst reports that we're going to see. And I understand that there is more, perhaps, that you are going to come out with next week. And I was told that that's why they raided Mar-a-Lago, that they wanted to find the Trump-Russia documents that indicated there was absolutely no collusion and that there was no evidence to even start such an investigation. But Trump didn't have it there in Mar-a-Lago, but that's why they raided his house in 2022. Is that correct?
I don't have the details on the specifics of the Mar-a-Lago raid itself. Those are within the possession of the FBI. But there's no question in my mind that this intelligence community assessment that President Obama ordered be published, which contained a manufactured intelligence document. It's worse than even politicization of intelligence. It was manufactured intelligence that sought to achieve President Obama and his team's objective, which was undermining President Trump's presidency and subverting the will of the American people. So yes, next week we will be releasing more detailed information about how exactly this took place and the extent to which this information was sought to be hidden from the American people, hidden from officials who would be in a position to do something about it. And that's really the point here that I think is most important, Maria, and you said it in your opening. Accountability is essential for the future of our country, for the American people to have any sense of trust in the integrity of our democratic republic. Accountability, action, prosecution, indictments for those who are responsible for trying to steal our democracy is essential for us to make sure that this never happens to our country again.
Yeah, and I want to get to that right now because I've heard talk of a criminal referral. Are you referring this in a criminal matter?
We are referring all of the documents that we have uncovered to the Department of Justice and the FBI for a criminal referral.
Yeah. And do you believe that we will see prosecutions? I mean, our audience wants to know where this story goes from here. Will we ever see anyone held accountable for this incredible lie on the American people?
I will do all that I can, and we have whistleblowers, actually, Maria, coming forward now after we release these documents, because there are people who were around, who were working within the intelligence community at this time, who were so disgusted by what happened. We're starting to see some of them come out of the woodwork here because they, too, like you and I and the American people, want to see justice delivered. So we're going to provide everything that we have, everything that we will continue to gather to the Department of Justice for that direct intent and that direct purpose. There must be indictments, those responsible, no matter how powerful they are and were at that time, no matter who was involved in creating this treasonous conspiracy against the American people, they all must be held accountable.
So do you expect, just to be clear, do you expect indictments and prosecutions?
I'm not a lawyer. In my view, we have the evidence to be able to move forward and bring about justice, yes, to prosecute and indict those responsible.
And I want to really put a spotlight on who's responsible, because we've talked about the highest levels. Barack Obama, John Brennan, James Clapper. But we also have to look at things like, you just found all of this. Why didn't Durham find it? Why didn't Mueller find it? Okay, what about the FISA judges? Because when you look at this seditious conspiracy aimed at overthrowing the U.S. government and an elected president, you have to consider also the black robes. You've got to look at the FISA judges. And how about the fact that the judge who gave a slap on the wrist to Kevin Kleinsmith, who was the FBI agent who lied on an official document about Carter Page, who was spied on for a year, that judge is Judge James Boasberg. He's still at his desk, and he's still trying to stop Donald Trump's agenda. So what about the broader group of people that are also involved?
Maria, this is of such historic consequence that it cannot be limited to one or two or three different people. You just outlined the implications and the effects of what actually occurred, and I think you're really putting into a clear picture what we are referring to when we refer to the deep state. It is very far-reaching. These are people who are intent on undermining the will of the American people and trying to ultimately put themselves above our democracy. And this is why it's so important that we continue down this path. We continue to stay very focused. I question the same things that you're asking here. I don't know how it is. Yes, I put my team on this. We've been working on this over the last few months. I've been in this role as Director of National Intelligence for just about 6 months. I don't know what excuse there is for those who supposedly investigated this previously, whether it was Durham or others, that they were not able to put together the dots and ultimately show the truth to the American people. President Trump has delivered a maximum transparency mandate, and this is exactly what we're doing. The American people need to see the truth, and we're going to continue to do that every single day that I'm here.
Equally outrageous was the fact that we had the handwritten notes of John Brennan. I reported on it at the time. The CIA reported to President Obama that the Russians were aware that Hillary Clinton had come up with this idea to blame the Russians and working with Trump to win the election. And we actually saw his handwritten notes. So there's that evidence that, again, all of those people who were supposedly special counsels, independent counsels, blew off, right? Robert Mueller, John Durham.
That's right. I really cannot fathom. There is no rational or logical explanation for why they failed. The only logical conclusion that I can draw in this, Maria, is what you're implying here directly, is that there was direct intent to cover up the truth about what occurred and who was responsible, and the broad network of how this seditious conspiracy was concocted and who exactly was responsible for carrying it out.
So at the end of the day, we need to look at Pam Bondi. Is that the person who at the end of the day is going to bring us accountability? Pam Bondi?
Attorney General Pam Bondi, FBI Director Kash Patel, it is their responsibility to gather all of the evidence, both that we have released, the facts that have already been known previously, the information that will continue to come out, and move forward with this prosecution and these indictments.
All right. We are on it, and we'll be watching that.
Whoa. It is getting spicy, yo. It is getting spicy. DNI just reviewed everything. All right, here we go.
Hello, everyone. I'm Katie Pavlich, along with Kevin Cork, Nicole Sapphire, and Tom Shalhoub. And welcome back to the Big Weekend Show. The big story tonight. President Trump is marking his 6th month in office with massive wins. And tonight, his administration is calling for former President Obama to be prosecuted following DNI Tulsi Gabbard's explosive report on the 2016 Russia hoax. We're expecting to get more information next week as whistleblowers come forward.
There's no question in my mind that this intelligence community assessment that President Obama ordered be published was manufactured intelligence that sought to achieve President Obama and his team's objective, which was undermining President Trump's presidency. And next week, we will be releasing more detailed information about how exactly this took place and the extent to which this information was sought to be hidden from the American people, hidden from officials who would be in a position to do something about it. We have whistleblowers, actually, Maria, coming forward now after we release these documents, because there are people who were around, who were working within the intelligence community at this time, who were so disgusted by what happened.
DNI Tulsi Gabbard has already turned over hundreds of documents to DOJ for criminal referrals. The conspiracy stems from a December 2016 National Security Council meeting, which included John Brennan and James Comey's right-hand man at the FBI, Andrew McCabe. According to Gabbard's declassified report, Obama ordered a new assessment on Russia's election meddling after a presidential daily briefing concluded that Russia did not hack the election. Instead, the Obama-directed assessment was published in January 2017, claiming that Russia interfered in the election to help President Trump. As the report was being drafted, a DNI whistleblower was sidelined for questioning why the assessment was contradicting earlier intel and pressured to accept the Russia hoax. But the contradictions didn't concern the leaders of Obama's intel community, including James Comey.
There should be no fuzz on this whatsoever. The Russians interfered in our election during the 2016 cycle. They did it with purpose. They did it with sophistication. They did it with overwhelming technical efforts.
And Obama's report was found to have even more problems. Earlier this month, CIA Director John Ratcliffe said it was, quote, conducted through an atypical and corrupt process under the politically charged environments of Brennan and Comey. Ratcliffe found the FBI leadership demanded it be included the infamous Steele dossier, a fraudulent document funded by the DNC and Hillary Clinton's campaign. And Brennan agreed, insisting that the dossier be included in the report, despite multiple senior CIA officials opposing its inclusion, and one official warning Brennan that it risked, quote, the credibility of the entire paper. Brennan and Comey are already under criminal investigation, and as Gabbard prepares to release additional information, more officials could join them. Wow, Kevin. So lots of news today from Director Gabbard.
Yep.
Where do you think we go from here? And very interesting that additional whistleblowers may be bringing forth even more information that we haven't seen yet.
You know, there's a Latin saying, it's fiat judicia ruat caelum. Basically, let justice be done though the heavens fall. In other words, regardless of the consequences, we have to have justice if this was a criminal enterprise or conspiracy. Will that happen? I think Tom said it yesterday. It's highly doubtful, given that Washington doesn't like to police its own to the highest level. But I would also add this. Keep this in mind. If you look back at just the last, 4 or 5 years, think about all the high-level people, beginning with President Trump, who ultimately were arrested. I just saw a graphic the other day. It's got all these former Trump officials and people in his orbit. They were arrested for what they believed were violations of the law. If that's the same case and circumstance here, then let others be arrested as well.
Well, it seems, Nicole, at a minimum, former FBI Director James Comey committed perjury, given what he said under oath and what we know now about the details of the meeting and the intelligence.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't even know what that means to actually say in that professional setting there's no fluff or whatever. Fuzz.
Yes. Yes.
I don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
But I find it very remarkable that the same media outlets that were saturating the airwaves about Russia collusion are absolutely silent on this bombshell report from Director Gabbard. The fact that maybe the big coup from the Democrats wasn't when they ousted President Biden and put in Kamala Harris, but it was actually when the former President Obama manufactured intelligence for political gain. One really interesting thing that came out of the interview this morning with Director Gabbard is she said after these documents were released, more whistleblowers are coming forward. One that makes me question, are they coming forward because they're worried that they could be held accountable once they start doing some digging?
Sure.
You know, who it was in the room is the big question is the people who were in that meeting, that closed door meeting with Obama that changed the narrative. I doubt any of those people are the whistleblowers, but they probably said something to someone and they're going to come forward. Is it all just going to be conjecture, hearsay? Will we actually have something that's tangible for an indictment? I don't know, but I can't wait to hear what they have to say.
You know, Tom, one of the missions for Director Gabbard is to restore trust in the intelligence community and the process here. And as we get even more information, I find that Americans, think that there's even more distrust given what we're finding in addition to what we've known about what happened with the 2016 election. I mean, she has a tall order there to get past all of this.
Yeah, and it's in addition to what we've known, because we were talking about this yesterday. Devin Nunes, he's everything he talked about is now coming out, okay? And so we already knew this because he ran a great investigation. We also had some great journalists and substackers who were revealing this information, but the mainstream media was denying it the whole time. Are they going to be able to keep denying it? The thing that prevented them last time was that the intelligence community kept saying, no, we got the goods. It's all secret. We can't show it to you, but we have a lot of stuff here. And, Adam Schiff would say the same thing in his, in his hearings. Now we've got the director of national intelligence putting this all on the table. Is the media going to be able to ignore it? Maybe, because like I said to Harrison Fields yesterday, I asked him, what's going to happen to these guys? And he said, well, they all work in the media now. Guys like Brennan and McCabe, they're all hired by major media.
Right, exactly. Exactly. They didn't cover the DNI report at all. And instead, they're obsessed with a number of other issues and this.
You even sent a letter to House Judiciary Chair Jim Jordan asking him to hold a hearing on this and subpoena some of Trump's top officials if necessary. Have you gotten a response? Do you think the pressure is doing anything at this point?
Well, we've had no direct official response yet, but Chairman Jordan has said that Attorney General Bondi will be coming in.
The people that have been fomenting this are right-wing influencers, members of Congress.
They want to show that they are loyal to this, I've called him so many things, but this wannabe Hitler for sure.
They're hoping this will split up the GOP, but a new Quinnipiac poll says otherwise. Trump has a whopping 90% approval rating among Republicans. And the poll was conducted during the release of the Epstein memo. So, Kevin, they tried to use this as a political weapon for about a week because they're having a really hard time finding things to use against the president, and at least among Republicans, it's not working.
Spaghetti against the refrigerator, right? And to see what's going to stick, or against the wall. I think they're going to keep trying new tactics. And this is especially important for them right now because, as we'll talk about, the president has had this string of victories. So a string of victories which will likely continue because he has the House and the Senate to help back him up. He has executive actions. I think this is not the first nor the last example of what they will try to do to knock this administration off kilter between now and the midterms. It may not be effective, especially now because I think he's on a roll.
Yeah, Nicole, I find it so interesting the media is refusing to report on this because the stakes are so high. This, as the director has said, this is not just about Republicans and Democrats. I mean, the entire intelligence community was politicized, was weaponized. And in America, that's not supposed to happen. That happens in other countries that fail. And they were willing to take the risk to completely discredit our agencies. And now nobody believes anything they're doing.
Well, unfortunately, we saw this play out over and over again during President Trump's first term. And the critics are saying right now that anything that Director Gabbard puts forth that people are not going to accept because she is a Trump appointee. And unfortunately, that is why it is so crucial that they are transparent and they release these documents is exactly what they're doing. And the same goes through with the Epstein case. You know, but the one thing with the Epstein files not being released that the left-leaning media keeps pushing for this, we have to be clear, this is not about justice. This is a distraction. To Kevin's point, they were distracting from the fact that the auto pen was abused, that Obama manufactured this intelligence that we're talking about. The border's secure, inflation's down, prices are down, energy expansion, banner year for air traffic controllers, thanks to Secretary Duffy, military recruitment. Trump is winning over and over again. And as you so perfectly pointed out yesterday, the release of the documents when it comes to Epstein, right now, Ghislaine Maxwell still has an ongoing appeal. I mean, this could really compromise due process. And on top of that, just releasing these files, anyone associated with Epstein, that does not make them a deviant. So to just release files without association, you know, it's a little dangerous.
Yeah, there has to be especially legal context there with and crimes attached if they're going to use the Department of Justice to name people. But Tom, on the issue of the intelligence community and the media, I mean, they're refusing to talk about this despite months and years of screaming about protecting democracy. And yet here you have the D&I director accusing the former president of ordering the cooking of intelligence to delegitimize a duly elected president that then snowballed into so many other things like the special counsel, impeachment, et cetera. And yet they don't seem interested in protecting democracy when it comes to President Trump and President Obama undermining it.
You know, as we go over these things one after another, I cannot believe that Donald Trump survived all of this stuff. You go down the list of things. Right? Forget about the bullet that whizzed by the side of his head. Yeah. I mean, they were trying to take him down over and over in so many different ways, the Russia investigation, the impeachment, and everything else. Yeah. But he kind of plowed through it all. And they think they're going to split the GOP now? Mm-hmm. This is what's the funniest thing. They already split the GOP. You had people like Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney. Yeah. That's how they split them. And what happened? Great they both lost their reelection. Mm-hmm. So the split happened, and they are in the past. There's a new GOP, and they're more united than ever.
Yeah, well, to Cheney's credit, she actually ran again, but Adam Kinzinger dropped out before he lost.
Oh, so that's right. He didn't really lose.
He took the easy way out. But turning now to the deep state under Joe Biden, America First Legal has now released new documents showing how the former Attorney General Merrick Garland weaponized government against concerned parents, labeling them domestic terrorists. The documents show how Biden's DOJ leadership sought a, quote, federal hook, so they could go after parents. The Biden administration reportedly wanted to investigate and criminally charge parents protesting school policies related to COVID, transgenderism, critical race theory, and other issues. I mean, Kevin, when you look at the way that crime went up all over the country under Joe Biden's administration, the fact that the Department of Justice under Merrick Garland was focused on parents who had questions and wanted to be involved in their kids' education and not having these COVID mandates and making sure they're learning math and not about gender at age 2. I mean, it's astonishing.
It's infuriating when you really think about it, because your focus could have been in so many other areas. And for the record, there was an FBI, remember that FBI memo out of Richmond's office, and they were allegedly targeting Catholics? I mean, this is part and parcel to what the weaponization of government has been all about. And the problem is, in D.C., a lot of people at the higher echelon of our government have long been thought to be untouchable, with the notable exception, of course, of the 45th and 47th president. They would not go after the top guys because it's Washington. But I think that may be about to change, because the evidence is overwhelming that some of them did some things that were not only unlawful, they were antithetical to this country's standing and our traditions and, frankly, the rule of law. So we'll find out soon.
And Tom, I mean, Democrats gave up the issue of education as a result of this.
Yeah.
I mean, Glenn Youngkin, for example, in Virginia, ran as a Republican for governor and won based on upholding parental rights rather than attacking them. Kind of crazy that the Department of Justice wanted to put parents who seem pretty normal in prison.
Yeah, and it wasn't just theoretical. I mean, you talk about that memo that talked about conservative Catholics. It wasn't in theory. It was in practice.
That's
Mark
right.
Houck, Catholic pro-life guy.
Exactly
Do you remember
right.
they raided him? You can look at that on YouTube to this day.
That's right.
They barged in and they frog marched him out there.
In front of his kids.
A guy who was demonstrating at an abortion clinic. Okay, so, yeah, it's ridiculous, and they keep losing, but they don't learn the lessons. And that education thing, a lot of that had to do with COVID. And they know the Democrats, they fouled that whole thing up. And there were kids that, they lost their entire teen years, their high school years.
Absolutely.
Couldn't go to their prom. They couldn't get their education. And so, their credibility is gone on education.
Yeah, lost decades and generations of education in this country. And also, they wouldn't let people go to their grandparents' funerals either, which is a whole other issue. But Nicole, what are your thoughts on this, just given what you know about schools and COVID and all the other things?
Well, we're brushing over what America First Legal completely just showed us. I mean, with these new documents, we already knew A.G. Garland overstretched his authoritative reach by threatening these parents, right? But what we didn't know was that he was advised by civil rights attorneys based on these documents saying they're just expressing their First Amendment rights. They're not really doing anything wrong. Yeah. And now we also know that there was a memo from the White House saying, help us out here. What can you do? So the fact, this is, again, this calculated use of this federal power to intimidate these parents who were rightfully upset. The government and their closures and everything were directly harming their children. The parents knew it. They were frustrated, and they used their governmental power to threaten them. Mental health ED visits up 30% during COVID. Anxiety, OCD, suicides, where the kids are behind in math. I mean, we can go on and on about what happened to the children. The parents knew what was happening. The Biden White House and everyone under him overused their power, and it's alarming what happened.
Yeah. Glad they're getting to the bottom of it. All right, coming up on this.
It's getting spicy for the former president, the 44th president of the United States, Barack Obama. The DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, is going in heavy. All right, here we go. More information this morning concerning the Russia hoax.
So in just a few hours, Harvard and the White House facing off in court as the Ivy League school fights to claw back more than $2 billion in federal funds frozen by President Trump as it's accused them of not protecting Jewish students on campus. Got the video. Our next guest says Harvard has a weak argument here. Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett joins us now. Greg, they're going to say that they're doing everything possible and the president has no right to do this.
Yeah, the problem for Harvard, Brian, is they managed to incriminate themselves. Their own commission study found rampant anti-Semitism on campus, and frankly, the university did little or nothing to protect the targeted Jewish students and others. And instead, Harvard coddled the offenders and the protesters while creating this hostile environment of intolerance and intimidation and harassment, even encouraging it. And there's also, Brian, evidence that race discrimination in admissions and hiring continues at Harvard, even though the Supreme Court told them to stop it. So all of that violates the Civil Rights Act. And the penalty, of course, is a loss of billions in federal funds. Yet Harvard seems to think they're entitled to government grants. I'd suggest that the elite geniuses at Harvard open up Webster's and look up the word grant. It's a gift. It can be given or taken away or made conditional. In other words, abide by the law, stop harming students, get back to your core mission of educating young people. Harvard doesn't want to do that. So their defense here is, oh, we can do anything we want under the First Amendment. Well, you can't. Free speech is not a protection for breaking the law. So we'll see what happens at today's hearing. It's an Obama-appointed judge who seems to rule consistently against Trump. If the case isn't settled, it'll go to the Supreme Court.
Right away, so they'll get a hearing. So just to give everyone an idea with Trump's actions against Harvard, because it's been over a matter of months, they revoked authorization to enroll international students. They suspended $2.2 billion worth of grants, $60 million in contracts, launched at least 8 investigations, asked the IRS to revoke the exempt status, and threatened to remove accreditation. So this is the gloves are off. Both sides are going to have one day. They're going to make their case. I think Robert Hur is representing Harvard. Remember the Hur report. And then this judge is going to take how long to make a ruling?
Well, we don't know. I doubt very much the judge will rule from the bench. Typically, it's taken under submission and then an opinion is written. That would likely be appealed to the Court of Appeals and then to the Supreme Court. So it's a long process. In the meantime, there are negotiations between the Trump administration and Harvard. That may, in the end, be the way to go.
So let's talk about what happened, what Tulsi Gabbard revealed late last week and then over the weekend on Fox and Friends and with Maria. And that is that they have found that there is a treasonous conspiracy between President Obama, the intelligence community, and many higher-ups in around 2016 to go ahead and trump up, pun intended, some type of Russian conspiracy with the Trump campaign that allowed them to win the election. Here's DNI Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah.
President Obama and his team, he directed a manufactured piece of intelligence that detailed not if, but how Russia tried to influence the outcome of the United States election. Foundational to it all was the fact that we had in President Obama and his leadership team people who did not want to accept the will of the American people in electing Donald Trump in 2016.
So what did we learn? What did you learn? You wrote a book on this. What did you learn from this?
Actually, 2 books on this. And it all begins with Hillary Clinton. Summer of 2016, the CIA director John Brennan discovers that Hillary has approved this plan to falsely smear Trump for colluding with Russia and helped finance the bogus dossier. We now have Brennan's handwritten notes recounting 2 meetings at the White House that included Obama, Biden, Clapper, Comey. And they knew it was all phony, but instead of telling the truth to the American people, they kept silent. They secretly joined the scheme to vilify Trump. They altered intel documents to propel the scandal, even though U.S. intelligence determined there was no Russian interference and helping Donald Trump win. So, this was the beginning, Brian, of a decade-long lawfare campaign, which could actually constitute a vast conspiracy case. And I think that's one of the things the FBI is now looking at. Brennan and Comey are already under investigation, but I suspect it may morph into something much larger.
Jim Himes did comment on this. The Democratic congressman from Connecticut called it a big lie and said that John Durham and Robert Mueller didn't find any of this. And Tulsi Gabbard's doing this for mouth-breathing MAGA supporters. So I'm going to play that soundbite a little bit later, but this will be a bit of the pushback. Let's see who wins the fact fight. Appreciate it, Greg.
Okay, Brian.
I'm Steve.
It's getting spicy, ladies and gentlemen. It is getting spicy. What in the world is going on here? What is going on? Shift to Shift is going through his too. Oh, dear Lord. Here we go. Shift to Shift. Adam Shift to Shift. Adam Shift to Shift, yo. Okay. Mm-mm. All right, let's do Mark Levin, rather.
Hello, America. I'm Mark Levin, and this is Life, Liberty, and Levin Saturday. We have two great guests this evening, Representative Elise Stefanik and Dan Hoffman, as you know, expert on Russia. But before we get to them, let's talk about a big matter, something that matters now, will matter tomorrow, and for 100 years from now. And that is, in my view, the decline of the West. That's the trajectory. Athens is gone, Rome is gone, the British Empire is gone. What's going to happen to the West, specifically America? We see the rise of Marxism and Islamism. For years on this network, and in my book, American Marxism, and in my book, On Power, my new book, I've talked about this fusion of Marxism and Islamism. People finally here and elsewhere have awakened to this fact. You can see it in this candidate running in New York, Mamdani. You can see it in Congress. You can see it with Tlaib and Omar and Bernie Sanders and so forth. You can see it all over the world. In European capitals. You can see it on our college campuses. This fusion of Marxism and Islamism. But two things I want to bring up about this, and I want to dig into this because this is crucially important. And if we don't do it, it's not going to be done. And that is this. The one person who's trying to save the West, who's trying to save the United States from this trajectory is President Donald Trump. He sees it. That's why he's trying to secure the border. That's why he's trying to deport individuals who hate our country and are undermining our country, and rather than assimilate into our society, are trying to destroy our society. That's why he's built up NATO the way he's built up NATO, in a brilliant way. We'll talk about that later in the program. That's why when he sees with Iran and other enemy states that want weapons of mass destruction, nuclear missiles and so forth that they can use against us, he can't turn his back. This is a man who also sees that we need to rebuild our economy, our industrial base, to strengthen our country. This is a remarkable man, this President Donald Trump. He's the one world leader who's trying to pull the West out of the movement towards the abyss, including our own country. But on top of this fusion that I've been writing about and talking about, now people have finally recognized, which is this fusion of Marxism and Islamism, there's one other element I've been thinking about here, and that is the old Confederacy and nullification. That's what you're seeing in the war against ICE. That's what you're seeing in Los Angeles with the mayor, in California with the governor. That's what you're seeing throughout the Democrat Party. And the Democrat Party is the house in which Marxism, Islamism, and nullification reside. They have abandoned Americanism. They can talk about the Constitution all they want. They've abandoned the Constitution. They've abandoned the idea of Republican, small r Republican government, representative government. They want centralized, all-powerful government. They want one-party rule. What is Marxism? It's hilarious. You got a guy running for mayor in New York City who says he's concerned about affordability. I don't know. When I think about affordability, the word Marxism doesn't come to mind, does it to you? Or when I think about tolerance, the extremist Islamists, that doesn't exactly come to mind, does it to you? No. And when I think about unity, a United States of America, I don't think about nullification in the old Confederacy. Do you? Now, Mark, what are you talking about? Sanctuary cities and sanctuary states are efforts to nullify constitutional authority in the federal government when it comes to immigration, that is, the naturalization of citizens. It is the effort to defy federal immigration law that's been there for a long time. First open borders when they pretended they weren't open, and then they claimed they needed bipartisan legislation. Those borders were opened intentionally. Why? Why? As a magnet to Marxists and Islamists, as a magnet to individuals, mostly from the third world, who would come into the country, many of them come into the country and would not assimilate into our country. Why? Because the Democrat Party is about one thing and one thing only: power. They are power hungry, whether it's Marxism or Islamism or the Confederacy, which I will emphasize again in a moment. They do not stand for Americanism. They don't care. And so now lawlessness, disorder,
attacking the cops, now attacking federal law enforcement. They object to deportation. Who did they embrace 6 weeks ago? They embraced a man who was part of MS-13, who was a wife beater, who was a human trafficker. They go down to El Salvador. They embrace this guy. They still embrace this guy. They embrace these individuals who come to the country, who hate Jews, who promote Hamas front organizations. They all have a home in the Democrat Party. They all have a home in the part of the culture that is aligned with the Democrat Party, academia, the media. This is serious, folks, and I'm here to break this down. Marxism, Islamism, the fusion of the two, and the old Confederacy, the Democrat Party and the old Confederacy. What is a sanctuary city? It's a nice name. Oh, a sanctuary. I love sanctuaries. Sanctuary state. That is an absolute defiance of the Constitution and federal law. Not for some good cause, for the cause of the Democrat Party. They do not want any of the people who came in here illegally deported. Period. Whether they're horrendous murderers, rapists, predators, whatever they are, they don't want any of them removed. Is that what our immigration law says, by the way? That only criminals who've committed criminal acts apart from coming here illegally, which is a criminal act, but additional criminal act, only they are to be deported? No. We have deportation requirements for people who come here illegally. And so they're trying to create an atmosphere, they're trying to create an environment where we can't deport illegal aliens. Not just criminals, but anybody. Where are you going to go? Are you going to Home Depot, 7-Eleven, a community center, a school, a church, go to their homes? I'm thinking, well, where else are they? In other words, where else are they? That's where they are. Oh, but you can't do that. You're going to be breaking up families. You're going to be doing this. You're going to be doing that. We have prisons filled with millions of prisoners that break up families. Should we open those doors too? Probably I shouldn't give them that idea because, they've been working very, very hard to decriminalize crime, to get Soros prosecutors in and to attack cops with their activist judges as well. But what are they doing? Power. That's what they want. Now let's talk a moment about this whole idea of nullification. Sanctuary cities are about nullifying the Constitution and federal law. This is very, very important to understand. Nullification of federal law, followed by secession. This is our history. Followed by the Civil War. That's what took place. Now, this idea of nullification is not federalism. Unfortunately, there are some quacks out there who think federalism means that states can nullify federal law. There's a supremacy clause. That doesn't mean the federal government's involved and controls everything, but there's a supremacy clause that when you have a conflict of laws, the federal law applies. Why? Because otherwise you have anarchy. Now, why is nullification unacceptable? Well, James Madison told us. Madison explains the Constitution is loaded with avenues that can be taken when you have a conflict of laws. You also have your representatives in Congress and in the Senate. You have the impeachment clause of the Constitution. There's many things you can do. And again, you have the amendment process to the Constitution, but you cannot have nullification. He also pointed out with this issue of secession, states can't just leave the Union. Why? Mr. Constitution, he was the author, the main author of the Constitution. Why, Mr. Madison? He said, because once the states signed on to the federal Constitution, the citizens of the states are also citizens of the United States. So a state can't deny its citizens citizenship in the country. That was his argument. That was his point. He was very concerned that we were headed toward a violent, civil war if this issue of nullification couldn't be resolved. Look at the violence in our streets today. Look at it. Look at it. You have members of Congress. You have mayors. You have governors, all Democrats, all singing from the same sheet of music. That deportation, literally, deportation of any kind is unacceptable. Oh, now and then they'll say, okay, the criminal's fine. As if you go in and somebody wears I'm a criminal, and somebody else says, I'm not a criminal. They open the border, tens of millions of people come in here illegally. Our enemies Our enemies, as the president says, are shoving their criminals, their terrorists, into our country, others into our country who they don't want. And now they're in our country. And so what's the Democrat Party's answer? Well, they're certainly not going to enforce immigration law. They're not known for enforcing immigration law. When they had the government for 4 years, they and Biden did not enforce immigration law. They undermined it. They sabotaged it. They defied it in order to bring millions into the country. Why? There's only one reason: to empower the Democrat Party so they'd have more congressional districts, so these individuals would have children under birthright citizenship. If it's not reversed, those children become automatically citizens. And then you have chain migration. What can they do? Hey, I can bring in 17, 20, 25 relatives. Then the country's gone. Except for the Democrat Party. It survives. If you think of the Democrat Party as a communist party, and you should, because that's how they think of themselves, even though they'll never say it, it's about the party, not the country. In China, Xi, the only reason he could lead the country is because he heads the party. It's about the party. In communism, it's the Communist Party. You owe fealty to the Communist Party. You own patriotism and loyalty to the Communist Party. Otherwise, you cannot serve in any significant governmental role, let alone the chairman or the president or the prime minister or whatever they call themselves. That's what's happening here in what I call negative power, Marxism, Islamism. Now, some of you might say, well, what the hell do Marxism and Islamism have in common? I mean, after all, Marxism doesn't believe in religion, and Islamism, well, it is a fundamentalist belief in Islam. Folks, it's the means. The means are the same. Islamism, as practiced in so many parts of the world, is not exactly known for tolerance, is it? It's not exactly known for the diversity of viewpoints. It's not exactly known for, well, the principles that underlay the Enlightenment. When you're dealing with Iran, when you're dealing with Hamas, when you're dealing with these terrorist states, you're dealing with the 7th century. You're dealing with primitive, barbaric ideologies. You don't have to believe me. Read their so-called scholars. Read what they're saying. This is what they're saying. The West must be destroyed. The West must be destroyed. Who else says the West must be destroyed? Marx. Read what he said. The West must be destroyed. What do they want to destroy? Every single social association that exists. The Islamists wipe out the West, wipe out Muslims with whom they disagree. The Jews got to go, the Christians got to go, the Hindus got to go, the Buddha, everything has to go. We need a purified, fundamentalist, religious belief system. God demands it. Marxism. Everything has to go. All of history is wrong. All that history created is wrong. We need to eliminate our connection to history, particularly economic history, particularly materialism, but not exclusively. All these institutions have to go. Even the family structure has to go. Even the social structure where parents raise children. The state needs to raise the children. Hence, you have Montgomery County, Maryland, the decision a few weeks ago by the Supreme Court stopping the county from preventing parents to remove their children from educational coursework that the family finds appalling. Marxism and Islamism, when it comes to the means, have everything in common. Coercive, violent. There must be no freedom of thought, no free will, no notion of private property rights, none, zero. Now, they'll sort it out at the end, assuming they overthrow us in the West. They'll sort it out. Somebody will live and somebody will survive. Either the Marxists will live or they'll die, or the Islamists will live or die. But God forbid we ever get to that point. My point about the Democrat Party is this. Not only do they embrace that, but they embrace the old Confederacy. Of course, the issues have changed. We're not talking about slavery, but we are talking about the destruction of the civil society. We are talking about a complete lack of assimilation. And when you have people coming into this country, or people taught in our country to hate the country, to hate our founding, to hate our history, that we are a racist nation, that our Constitution is a white nationalist document, and on and on and on, then you have a clean slate. A clean slate for what? The Enlightenment is dead. The great men of the Enlightenment that gave us the ideas for the Constitution, Locke, Montesquieu, so many others, they're dead. Aristotle, dead. Cicero, dead. They're all dead. And the whole notion of the Declaration of Independence, that you get your sovereignty from God. He's the sovereign. You're his children. Read your declaration. Therefore, when you set up a government, the people are the sovereign, not the ruling class, not imams, not the chairman of this party or that party. You are. You are. That all is destroyed. All of it. That is what's taking place in our country today. Now, you can see seeds of it growing. New York City, Minneapolis, Los Angeles, Dearborn, other places around the country. You can see it at our top Ivy League schools that have been conquered by these ideologies, funded in many respects by foreign governments, but also dark money billionaires in our own country like Soros and others, people who hate America, people who want to fundamentally transform America, and they have devoured these institutions. They have devoured the Democrat Party, and this is why you see their objection to enforcing our immigration laws. That's the population of the future. That's the citizenry of the future. Why? Because American citizens despise Marxism, Islamism, and the old Confederacy. And these are all autocratic, totalitarian ways to seize power. Power. The Democrats never talk about individual liberty, do they? They never talk about property rights, do they? They never talk about merit and success, do they? They never talk about law and order, do they? They never talk about the Constitution in a way the Constitution should be talked about, do they? They use very violent language. They make references to fascists of the past, genocidal maniacs of the past. They try to distract. They project onto others who they are and what they believe. They have effectively a Pravda, if you will, or Al Jazeera type American media filled with their own likes, their ilk, who spew this stuff for them. That's what's going on in the country today, America. This is why, when you look at Donald Trump, look at what he's done in 6 months, that it is so important that he succeeds, so we succeed. This is a one-time opportunity for a nation to save itself. And he's doing so many of the things that need to be done to save the nation. Fundamental things. And Europe may not understand it, but he's doing things to help save Western society in Europe as well. This is a historic, iconic figure who's doing things that are crucially important. This is why the Democrat Party hates him. This is why the Washington, New York, LA establishment hate him. This is why they want him to fail. And this is why it's important that we, Mr. and Mrs. America, who love this country, who want nothing to do with Marxism, Islamism, the old Confederacy, we believe in tolerance and freedom and success and the Constitution and the rule of law, legal immigration, not aliens pouring over the border and making demands. This is why we need to stick with our president. While there's others out there, reprobates, Lilliputians, who are trying to bring him down.
You ain't even got to say too much. You ain't got to say too much, Mark. The OG Mark Levin. You ain't got to say too much. I am a legal immigrant, and I do not support coming into the country illegally. So You ain't got to say too much, Mark Levin. All right, DHS Secretary Secretary Noem. She had two events, one about 2 days ago and one this morning. So we're going to play both so we can all have a conversation about it. Listen, it's not Republican first or Democrat first. It is America first. So I get it. You may be a Democrat, you may be a Republican, but it is America first. It is country before party. Here we go.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, Brian, nice to meet you. Well, thanks for being here. Yeah, absolutely.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Treasonous. I'm the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. We're here in Nashville today to highlight some of the excellent work that the Department of Homeland Security has been doing with HSI and ICE officers and agents here in this area. This office oversees not just operations within Nashville, but also throughout Tennessee and Kentucky. And they also are a key component to our investigative efforts that we put into the breaking up of drug and human trafficking rings. I'm so proud of this office and the agents that work here and in this area for what they do to protect children every day and what they do to protect United States citizens and get criminals off of our streets. President Trump has been focused ever since he's been in office on making America safe again. And that is what my job is as a secretary, is to make sure that we're following through on exactly what he promised the American people, to make sure that we're going after the worst of the worst every single day, get the murderers, the rapists, the child pedophiles and pornographers off of our streets and out of this country so that they can be brought to justice and face the consequences for their actions. Since President Trump has taken office, we have arrested almost 300,000 and more criminals and illegal aliens here in the United States of America and brought them to justice and deported them out of our country. 70% of those individuals have criminal charges that they are convicted of, or they have criminal charges that are pending against them. Overwhelmingly, the families that live in this country are thrilled to have these people off of their streets so that they can continue to raise their children in a country where they can live safely, send their kids to school, and go to sleep peacefully in their beds at night each and every day. Here in Tennessee, HSI Nashville has arrested some individuals that I want to highlight specifically that are tied to foreign terrorist organizations as designated by President Trump's administration, and also tied to gang organizations that are not only present here in this country, but also internationally as well. 2 Venezuelan nationals with ties to Tren de Aragua have been arrested here. This was done back in January, and their crimes include promoting prostitution and evading arrest. In February, HSI Nashville arrested a 35-year-old Venezuelan charged with homicide after he stabbed his own wife to death. HSI also arrested a 33-year-old illegal alien that was from El Salvador. This individual was affiliated with the MS-13 gang, and he's the subject of a red notice that we participate with Interpol, and is wanted in El Salvador as well for aggravated murder. In January, HSI Nashville here arrested a 22-year-old Guatemalan who was an illegal alien here in this country. The charges against this individual count 3 charges of child rape, sexual exploitation of a minor, and identity theft. Also arrested here is a 60-year-old illegal alien from Iraq. His criminal history includes convictions of rape, larceny, and false imprisonment. And last but not least, that I'll highlight here individually today, is we all remember the story of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the MS-13 member. He was a human trafficker, a domestic abuser, a criminal illegal alien, and a national of El Salvador, and a member of MS-13. The mainstream media consistently tries to defend this individual as an innocent Maryland man, but I will be very clear, this man has a history and decades-long ties to a gang that has been convicted of human trafficking, and he himself has been deeply tied to those horrific charges and criminal activities. He's here in Nashville currently on federal charges for human trafficking, and the grand jury's indictment describes a monster. Abrego was a full-time human trafficker who would brutally abuse women under his control and even solicited individuals for child pornography. Now, all of these criminals are evil. They're horrible human beings. They're the worst of the worst. And America is safer because they're off of our streets, because of the work of the individuals behind me, but all of the agents and officials within HSI and ICE. Rioters, criminal thugs, legacy media, open border politicians, often you'll hear them standing up and defending the evil criminals that I've been talking about. And in the meantime, what they're doing is smearing and doxing our agents and putting them and their families at risk. Leftists have doxed, attacked, and tried to intimidate the men and women who uphold our laws and keep our streets safe. And now our ICE officers are facing an 830% increase in violence against them and their families. One of the open border politicians is right here in this state and is right here in this city. And I'm specifically calling out the mayor of Nashville. Mayor Freddie O'Connell has gone after our ICE individuals and agents that work with HSI. He's openly doxed them, revealed their information to the public, encouraged people to work against them in their efforts to clean up the streets of Nashville, and he has forced his city officials, his employees of the city of Nashville, to document every single interaction that they have with federal immigration authorities. What the mayor is doing to the city is shameful, and what he needs to do is participate with us and make sure that he's helping us uphold the rule of law. Listen, if people don't like the laws in this country, go to Congress and change them. But what these agents do every single day is to uphold the law and make sure that it applies equally to everyone, and that criminals aren't placed above the American citizens that live in this city and live in this state and in this country. O'Connell and his administration are playing politics, and they're playing politics to a dangerous level that's risking people's lives. Despite the mayor's reckless behavior, we're going to continue to enforce the law here in Nashville. We're going to continue to fight to keep families safe, and here in this city, but also in this state, and continue throughout the country. Bringing violent criminals to justice is our priority, and doing so in order to make America safe again is what we will work to do every single day. We're also seeing similar acts of injustices happen in Nashville by other entities as well. We're seeing obstruction against federal immigration law by Belmont University. As you know, they have openly said that they will house illegal immigrants on their campus and do that in defiance of the federal government. President Trump campaigned on immigration enforcement. The American people voted for immigration enforcement. They voted to clean up their streets and get these criminals out of our country. I'm very proud of the fact that since President Trump has been in office, we have removed over 600 known and suspected terrorists out of the United States of America, that we have brought thousands of gang members from MS-13, TDA, and brought them to justice and deported them out of our country. We're continuing to go after these criminals to protect American citizens. And now that the president's big, beautiful bill is passed, we have the resources to double down. We will bring more agents to Nashville. We will bring more resources to this state. And we will make sure that even though politicians continue to play politics and try to lie about what the work is that we're doing to make America safe again, that we will continue to fight for the families that live here and make sure that these child pedophiles, these rapists, and these murderers are off our streets. We will never apologize for protecting the American people. President Trump is working hard every day to make sure that this is a country where the rule of law is applied equally to everybody, that illegal criminals are not placed above or prioritized above the American citizens that live here and work and are just pursuing the American dream. So with that, I will close and open it up to any questions that you may have. Yes, way in the back.
So you said that there's an 830% increase in these attacks against ICE agents.
Yes.
We've seen a lot of rhetoric, heated rhetoric. One congressman saying that people need to be willing to plead in their opposition to ICE. Who do you blame for this massive rise of violence against ICE agents?
I would say it's the rhetoric of elected officials, of leaders, leftist organizations, and the media. When they don't tell the truth, there's consequences for that. When they don't talk about the facts of what's happening out on our streets and what the American people need, then it gets distorted and the information is used in a way that can undermine what the rule of law is. I would encourage every single media entity that's here today to go talk to an ICE agent about what their job is, what they've been told their priorities are, and what it's like for their family every single day to go out in the streets and try to go after these criminals. The Trump administration has specifically targeted the worst of the worst. The individuals that we are going after are those that are violent criminals, those that are breaking our laws, and those that have final removal orders. And in many of these places, we've negotiated for their safe return back to their own home country. And if they're criminals, they will face consequences for their crimes. I'm grateful for the fact that we have a president that stands up for the everyday American, and I would be thrilled if people would talk about the fact that when you get a rapist off the street, how many families have we protected? When you get a murderer off the street, a pedophile off the street, look at the families that will never have to be victims because that work was done. Too much time is spent focusing on these criminals when you should be focusing on the people who have been victims in the past and the fact that we're stopping future people from becoming victims as well. Yes.
President Noem, you speak of the worst of the worst that the Trump administration is going after. You see these four individuals who 70% of them you say that ICE is picking up have criminal convictions and charges. Why not release their names in the rap sheets and investigate?
Well, many times the investigations are still ongoing, or they have lawyers where there's appeals going on, and so we follow the rule of law and give everybody their due process rights, but make sure that we're pursuing these criminal cases so that these individuals can face consequences for their crimes. This office here specifically is one of the most outstanding offices that we have in this nation for going after child exploitation rings and child trafficking and human trafficking. So I'm so thankful for their investigative work. They're breaking up trafficking rings that have been filtering internationally and have been using Nashville as a hub. I would encourage the mayor here to partner with them instead of fighting them, because by his rhetoric and by what he is requiring his city employees to do and by not having the backs of these law enforcement officers, he's allowing more children to be trafficked, more children to be victimized, and more families to suffer because of his actions and his politics.
But for those who are convicted and be deported, why not release their names in the rap sheet?
Oftentimes they are. Oftentimes they are. And also we have security agreements that we have negotiated with foreign countries as well, their home countries. I've been to probably 10 different foreign countries that most of these illegal criminals have come from, met with their presidents, met with their leaders, and negotiated them sharing information with us. Extradition agreements. We want the data on who they know is in our country that's dangerous, and then also when we return someone back to their country that is a criminal, that is a murderer or a violent rapist or abuser, that they're facing consequences in their home country as well. And I would encourage everybody, there's a lot of things being said in the media. If there is someone that's in this country illegally and they're concerned about being here and interacting with our immigration officials, go home. You have the opportunity today to go back to your home country. If you go home, we will buy you a plane ticket. We will, when you land, give you $1,000 so that you can get started on your feet and provide food and housing for your family. And you have the opportunity to come back to the United States the right way. You have the opportunity to come here and to pursue the American dream. But if you wait until you get detained by our officers and get encountered or are surrounded by individuals who are breaking the law and get deported, you will never get the chance to come back to the United States of America. And many of the times when I've traveled to these other countries and visited with their presidents and their governments, they have established now programs to help support their citizens that are coming back to their countries. Many of these countries are setting up loan programs for houses when people come back, training for jobs that they need to have filled in their countries. They're giving children scholarships that are coming home so they can get an education and get their feet under them. So when you look at Guatemala, Honduras, Colombia, Panama, many of these countries, Mexico that I've visited, many of them are setting up programs so that when people do come home, that they have the opportunity to have a job and an education that they've never had before. And I'm proud of that work that's being done so that when individuals do things the right way, they can be rewarded for that. Yes.
Madam Secretary, Tennessee has a lot of farmers that may rely on migrant workers to be able to yield their crops. So what's your message to them on what they should do?
You know, what I would tell them is we've got visa programs that they can participate in to help them with their workforce issues. The H-2A visa program is under my purview, and I don't have a limit on how many of those I can issue. I would encourage them to reach out, and we can help them meet that workforce if the need is there. Many times there's people in this country as well that are looking to fill positions, but I will be very clear in saying that there will be no amnesty under the Trump administration. That individuals who are here illegally, we're hopeful that they will come and do it the right way, and that we'll make sure that we streamline and get rid of the bureaucratic hiccups and things that have slowed down the process in the past. We are streamlining the paperwork process and the application process so it's much quicker and responsive to the needs that farmers have. Yes.
Because you singled out Klobuchar Abergo. I want to ask you about some of the witnesses giving testimony against him. 3 of these people have been deported multiple times. Now they're receiving some kind of pardon to stay in the U.S. Can you talk about who granted these permissions and why is this allowed for some of these people who have been deported prior, who have been convicted felons, to stay in the U.S.?
Yeah, no, I can't speak to the specifics of how some of the case negotiations have been conducted, but I am grateful that this man is being brought to justice. He has a lifetime history of trafficking individuals and of taking advantage of minors, soliciting pornography from them, nude photos of them, abusing his wife, abusing other illegals, aliens that were in this country, women that were under his care while he was trafficking them. He's a horrible human being and a monster, and he should never be released free.
All that is evidence that the judge finds hard to believe because it's based on the testimony of these 3 witnesses.
I hope this judge does the right thing and brings this man to justice for the crimes that he has committed. The evidence is overwhelming, and this judge needs to make sure that he applies the law equally to every single person that shows up in his courtroom.
And then I do want to ask you, because ICE operations are taking place predominantly in Latino communities.
And I wouldn't say that's true. You know, I would say that the media has highlighted operations like that, but we have operations ongoing throughout the country every single day in communities everywhere. So I would not say that anyone could show that they're highlighted in Hispanic communities. They're highlighted in areas that we know we have investigative work and casework to show that we may have enforcement mechanisms that need to be put in place because we have criminal activities ongoing.
Well, my audience is predominantly Latino, so they kind of every day say they're fearful because a lot of people have been targeted based on their skin color, not necessarily.
That's not true. And so that has been another false narrative that has been put out there in the media that I absolutely want to throw back at you and say that is absolutely false, and don't you dare ever say that again. We have judges out there and other individuals saying people have been targeted that way, and it's not true. Every single operation that we do on ICE is based on investigative work and on case work to show that there is a reason and reasonable suspicion to go into an area and to talk and look at individuals that are involved in criminal activity. So because that is a narrative that people have been out there saying doesn't make it true, and it should not be repeated. Yes.
2 questions. First one, just you mentioned the budget increase. Excuse me, it's going to be coming to ICE. Beyond just more personnel, more boots on the ground here, I mean, what do you see as what Nashvilleians will see in the city in terms of enforcement detention over the next few years? What's that going to actually look like?
Well, what the people of Nashville will see is obviously more individuals and more agents, but they'll also see more training and equipment. We'll see more investigative tools that will be able to be utilized. My hope is that we also get the chance to work with the Department of Justice to get more immigration judges. Many times we have individuals who wait a long time to get through the immigration process, and that is one of the reasons that people point to while people get anxious to come into our country illegally is because it takes so long to do it the right way. So not only do we want to get our casework when we bring someone into our detainment processed quickly so that we can get a decision made, but also those individuals who want to come here legally, that we have the opportunity to do so in a much more streamlined manner.
Are we likely to see more facilities kind of erected here in Middleton?
I don't think we necessarily will see more facilities. What we need is when we have a city like Nashville where the mayor is playing politics and not necessarily there backing up our officers, you'll see more individuals to make sure that these officers are out on the street and have enough force to keep themselves safe while they do their work.
And then just one follow-up on the due process. It's standard within law enforcement to release names and charges before people have gone through trial or through that legal process. I mean, that is part of due process. How can we, the press, and by extension the public, ensure that the federal government is ensuring due process if we're not allowed to know the names of these people and the charges?
We are following due process on every single case. I'm not sure if you're talking specifically about a case or two, but I can follow up with you after the press conference and see if there's some you're not getting. But if we are not giving you names and data and information, it is because we are following the law and ensuring that every individual gets the due process that they need. Now, due process looks different based on what case it is and who the individual is, but we will continue to make sure that we're focusing on following the law and making sure we're bringing criminals to justice.
Do you think we see more names released?
We will release names as we are allowed to by the law.
In the case of Klobuchar Garcia, there's been a lot of discussion on whether he will be deported if he's released ahead of trial. What's your perspective on whether to have him deported and potentially not stand trial because he'll be in another country, How would that work, and what's the perspective?
He's standing trial now, and I hope he faces consequences for his crimes, and that will be something that we will be able to deliver for the people that have been victimized by him and his actions over the years. And then when that is done and that process is over, he should never be allowed to be free in the United States of America. So even if he goes home to his home country, my hope is that he will be incarcerated there for the rest of his life as well.
Will he remain in the United States up until the point of trial?
That's not under my purview, but my hope is that he would be able to face consequences for his crimes. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Secretary, what do you think about the Dignity Act of 2025 that Republican Maria Vera Salazar introduced? Do you support it?
Well, I've not read the act as she introduced it. I've talked to Maria extensively about it and her ideas in this legislation, and I think it's a great discussion for Congress to have. We'll continue to work with her and with the White House on what we can do to look at immigration law in this country and see what we can do to meet some of the needs that we have. Listen, immigration reform has been needed for many, many years, and I appreciate her and her leadership in bringing forward a bill that can start that discussion. Yes.
Just talking about Klobuchar Garcia, you've mentioned that he is, in fact, an MS-13 member. There was witness testimony that the attorney for Klobuchar Garcia disputed that said that there were no signs or markings that he was, in fact, an MS-13 gang member. So what criteria has DHS used to, in fact, label him an MS-13 gang member?
There's a large case built against Abrego Garcia, and people will continue to see that throughout trial, and they'll continue to see that throughout this case. I will say that him consistently being surrounded and working with those gang members to traffic individuals across the state for many, many years, and working in conjunction with them and targeting individuals of rival gangs against MS-13, and even helping to help facilitate the murder of a mother of one of the rival gangs that is opposed to MS-13. All of that builds into a case of work that has been done for many years against this individual. He is a monster, and he is tied to a terrorist organization that has perpetuated violence against human beings for many, many years. My hope is that he will stand trial and get the consequences of his actions, and that justice will be served for his victims.
And you brought up Nashville Mayor Freddie O'Connor, that he's been going after ICE agents. I had an interaction with him when he said the real concern is not releasing the names of ICE agents, but
No, that is a real concern. It is a real concern that he has jeopardized them and their families. They face violent acts. Their families are targeted. They're doxxed. Their personal information is put out there, and people are treating them horrifically. And he needs to stop and knock it off and grow up and act like a leader and start sending his law enforcement officers to have our backs. Because what we are doing is upholding the law. We are upholding the law every single day. If he doesn't like the law, go change it. Go to the federal government and change the law. But what we are doing here is making our streets safer for the people of Nashville, and the people of Nashville overwhelmingly support getting criminals off of their streets. He should be helping us do that.
Well, he's saying that the unmasking of ICE agents need to be unmasked, that's the real concern.
So Mayor O'Connell's much more worried about victimizing our law enforcement officers than he is going after criminals? This guy's priorities are completely screwed up, and he doesn't deserve to be a mayor. He doesn't deserve to be in office. Yes.
Secretary, do you have any specific information you can share with us about the number of additional agents or the additional resources you plan to bring to Nashville or Tennessee?
Well, that analysis is getting done. We will have dozens of more officers and agents that will be here in the Nashville area. And we will continue to make sure that there are resources not just in Nashville, but throughout the state. And also this office covers Kentucky as well. So we will do an analysis of where we see criminal activity and where we need those individuals to make sure that we can have people go forward and do their operations and do them safely. Clearly, when there is a sanctuary city or there's a sanctuary state, we're going to have to put more federal officers there, because there's not a cooperative agreement with the local and state law enforcement that has their backs and allows them to conduct their operations safely. So when you're looking at a city like New York City or Nashville or Chicago, Illinois, we're going to have to put more federal officers there in order to run our operations safely. But we have over 800 agreements across this country with other city, local, and state officials that partner with us every single day. And we're so thrilled to have those leaders in those cities being grateful that we're there cleaning up their streets and getting dangerous individuals off their streets. Thousands and thousands of mayors and governors and local officials and sheriffs and city council members across this country are partnering with us and working with us every day so that when we go out and do an operation, they have our backs. And they're helping us secure locations, and they're partnering with us. It's unfortunate we don't have that kind of working relationship here in Nashville. And last question.
Madam Secretary, back in May, ICE agents cooperated with THP troopers for traffic enforcement stop. So far, we've been blocked by local and state authorities to look at biographical data for those people to ensure Hispanics weren't unlawfully being targeted. Will ICE release that data if locals won't?
Do you have any indication that anybody was targeted just specifically because of what their race or creed was?
CAD reports that I have right now on those show disproportionately Hispanic people being stopped and detained.
Every single enforcement action that we have, every single enforcement operation that we have conducted has been based on a casework and investigative reports on criminal activities and where we know that there is those types of things going on and individuals are located.
Would you
All right, good. We will release any information that's available that we can according to the law. And we have been extremely transparent. This has been the most transparent administration that we have had in a very long time on operations that we have on the ground. And that's one of the things that makes me so proud to work for President Trump, is that he has been an open book on making sure that he's following through on exactly what the American people have asked him to do. Focus on, number one, securing the border. For 2 months in a row now, we have 0 illegal aliens that have crossed our borders and come into this country. And that is one thing that has done amazing results in making sure that we're keeping Americans safe. The second thing he has promised to do that overwhelmingly the American people wanted him to was to get the worst of the worst off of our streets. And so our focus is there, and that's what we will continue to do, is to provide operations that remove these murderers, rapists, pedophiles, and human traffickers and drug traffickers off of our streets. When you look at the table in front of me, these are all drugs and guns that have been taken off of the streets from this office and this area, this state, that are no longer out there killing our children, that are no longer out there perpetuating drug addiction and splitting up families and conducting violence on the streets. They have been brought into and taken away from criminals and terrorist organizations because of the work that these officers do. My hope is that we can continue to do this kind of work and do it in a way that makes sure that we're honoring our law enforcement officers and we're recognizing the rule of law needs to be enforced and enhanced here in the United States. That's what the American people demanded, and that's what President Trump is following through on. So thank you.
All right, this happened this morning. Here we go.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kristi Noem. I'm the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, and we just recently, in the last couple of days, have had one of our own that has been attacked and has been harmed dangerously by violent criminals that have been run loose here in New York City, but also in this country, as a result of sanctuary city policies and the policies of the Biden administration. I just want you all to know that we have our hearts and our prayers going out with our officer and with his family and his friends, and we'll be lifting him up in prayer for his quick recovery and his healing from this terrible tragedy that has befallen him. Listen, our officer was off duty on Saturday evening when him and his friend were attacked. They were attacked by 2 individuals that were set on robbing them, and thankfully he had his service weapon with him and was able to defend himself and his friend and injured one of those individuals that was trying to do them harm. His quick action speaks to his tenacity and his excellence in training and skill, and because of that, one of the perpetrators was wounded in this interaction and was incarcerated when he came in to get medical treatment. One of the suspected attackers, the one that was injured, his name is Miguel Francisco Mora Nunez, a Dominican national that was entering into this country illegally back in 2023. He was then released back into this country by the Biden administration. Miguel Francisco Mora Nunez is and has a rap sheet that is a mile long. He was arrested. He was charged with grand larceny and also assault. The state of Massachusetts has an active warrant out for him for armed robbery with a firearm. He also has many other charges against him, such as kidnapping and witness intimidation. There's absolutely zero reason that someone who is scum of the earth like this should be running loose on the streets of New York City. He was arrested 4 different times in New York City, and because of the mayor's policies and sanctuary city policies, was released back to do harm to people and to individuals living in this city. Make no mistake, this officer is in the hospital today fighting for his life because of the policies of the mayor of this city and the city council and the people that were in charge of keeping the public safe. They refused to do so, and now we have the situation on our hand where someone who has dedicated their lives to protecting the public is now fighting for his own. I'm calling on every single mayor and sanctuary city and sanctuary governor to change their policies and to change their tactics right now. Their job is to take an oath to protect the public, to protect families that are out there every single day trying to provide for each other and to try to live the American dream, and they want to do so safely in their own communities. How many more lives will it take? How many more people have to be hurt and victimized before we have public safety be a #1 priority in some of our largest cities? When I look at what Mayor Adams has done to New York City, it breaks my heart to see the families that have suffered because of his policies. We can look across this country at other mayors. We look at Mayor Wu in Boston and what has happened there under her watch. What's happened in LA with the riots and the violence and the protests that have gone on because of Mayor Bass and what she has perpetuated. When you look at Mayor Johnson in Chicago and how devastating it is to live in that city and some of those poorest communities, how they suffer every single day with the violence that's in front of them, just because these individuals are protecting criminals. They're protecting criminals who go out and murder, rape, rob. They perpetuate violence on our children. They traffic them and drugs and damage this country every single day under the protection of sanctuary city and governors who put in place these policies that allow them to perpetuate these crimes with no consequences. What I would say is today, my hope is that this would wake up these individuals, and they would recognize that they can't keep letting these dangerous criminals go free. They can't continue to let these individuals be brought in for crimes they're committing against the public and then releasing them right back onto the streets with no consequences whatsoever. Fortunately for us today, our officer survived. He survived. He's going through a very difficult time, and I would ask that you respect him and his family and his friend who was with him and what they have gone through. But I would also say that we can't guarantee that the next victim of these dangerous criminals will be treated the same or will be able to get through this dangerous situation. We were able to bring the second individual in and have detained him as well, and he will face consequences and hopefully strong prosecution for his crimes and his involvement on Saturday night. But my hope is that we can continue to, when ICE is out in our communities and they're lodging detainers against individuals that are in this country illegally perpetuating crimes, that we would have a city like New York City start to honor them and allow us to bring these criminals to justice, allow them to get them out of our communities so that they can't continue to hurt people like we saw on Saturday night. We still have a lot of work to do. We've seen violence against our officers go up over 830% just in recent days because of the rhetoric out of politicians and the rhetoric out of individuals who are letting this victimization go on and on against the public. So I would call on everybody today to recognize what can happen, how in one moment someone's life can change, their whole family can change. And it is happening every day across this country. And this officer and his family, while today they are suffering, they still continue to serve the public and recognize that they want to go back out and make sure that they're doing all that they can to uphold the rule of law in this country. We're doing everything in our power to make sure that our officers out on the streets have the equipment and the training and the resources and the backup that they need to do their jobs, but they should never have to deal with an individual who was arrested 4 different times for violating the law and then released. And that individual was released on the streets of the city because of Mayor Bass's policies and because of his city council's policies and because of politicians who talk big and then people get hurt. People get hurt, and in many cases, they end up losing their lives. Let's hope that that's never true and that today is the day that those policies change and people get the courage to make sure they're making the decisions that actually do protect people going forward. We're going to bring the perpetuators of violence to justice. President Trump has promised that for the American people, and he's going to follow through on it. I'll do all that I can, and I'm so grateful to have partners like Rodney Scott with me from Border Patrol and Protection, and also with Tom Homan as the borders are. We'll continue to work to make sure that we're dealing with the violence that we see on our streets, but we also recognize that here in these sanctuary cities, it's much more dangerous because of the politicians who aren't taking responsibility for what they're doing. They're setting the American people up to become victims of crime, and it has to stop today. I'd ask you all to keep our law enforcement officers in your prayers, their families, as they face the environment that they do every day while they do their job. This officer wasn't even on the job. He was out enjoying a beautiful evening with a friend of his and was a victim of crime, and it ended up with him mortally and seriously wounded, and he is going to, because of the great care of the doctors that are taking care of him today, pull through. But our prayers are going to be with him and his family as they work their way through this situation. With that, I will turn it over to Rodney Scott, who is the Commissioner of our Customs and Border Protection.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Madam Secretary, for all the support that you've given us and the support you're showing our officers today and the comments that you just made. My name is Rodney Scott. I'm currently the Commissioner of United States Customs and Border Protection. But as I talk, I want you to remember that I was also the Chief of the United States Border Patrol until 2021. I want to really start by thanking the medical personnel here in New York City at the hospital, the EMS workers, and even the guys behind me in blue that have shown tremendous support to our officer and to his family as well. We should not be here today. The reason these two assailants are inside the United States today is because of failed border policies by the Biden administration. I personally warned the Biden administration against their open border policies in 2021. I was ignored, and exactly what I predicted, many of us predicted, happened. Total chaos along the border. These two individuals, the two assailants, were released into the United States after being apprehended because of failed policies. President Trump stepped up and fixed those failed policies on January 20th of this year. With the support from Secretary Noem, we now have one of the most secure, we have the most secure border that I've ever seen in my entire lifetime. Much of that resolution was by fixing failed policies based on facts and evidence. Sanctuary city policies across this nation and some of these, and even states in some cases, are failed policies. The facts and evidence are there in front of you. It's time for local leadership and state leadership to step up to the plate like President Trump did. Acknowledge crime is crime. Acknowledge the fact that there's no global information system where we can vet these people coming into the United States. We do not know who they are, and we have to have border security where we simply know and control who and what enters our country, just like we do our homes. This should not be political. I'm calling on all state and local leaders to step up to the plate, get rid of these sanctuary city laws, and simply enforce the laws on the books. Work with your federal agencies so that we can actually root out these criminals from our neighborhoods. Last but not least, I should have said this up front, thoughts and prayers for our officer and his family, and I would ask that you keep them in your thoughts and prayers as well. Thank you for your time, but please remember this. This was 100% preventable. It was caused by bad policy, and it can be fixed with good policy. Thank you.
I visited the officer last night. Of course, he was heavily sedated, so I didn't have words with him, but I did talk to his family. They're devastated. It's just a shock to the soul when you walk in and see that young man laying there. Secretary said it, Rodney said it, sanctuary cities are sanctuaries for criminals. Hard stop. I've been doing this since 1984. I've never seen a situation where I see it today. New York City, how many times do you want to see NYPD attacked by illegal alien criminals in this city? Now a federal officer. How many citizens in this city have been attacked by illegal aliens in this city? You see the polls. Everybody agrees we should be arresting public safety threat illegal aliens, but you got a city council here that locked us out of Rikers Island. Are you kidding me? So an illegal alien in Rikers Island we can't talk to, we don't have access to. That makes the city unsafe. Every sanctuary city is unsafe. I'll say it again, sanctuary cities are sanctuaries for criminals. And I'm going to work very hard with Secretary Noem to keep President Trump's promise and his commitment several weeks ago that sanctuary cities are now our priority. We're going to flood the zone. You don't want to let us into jail to arrest a bad guy in the safety and security of a jail. You want to release him into the street, which makes it unsafe for the community, makes it unsafe for the officer, makes it unsafe for the alien. Because anything can happen on a street arrest. So what we're going to do, we'll have more agents in New York City to look for that bad guy. So sanctuary cities get exactly what they don't want, more agents in the community and more agents in the work site. If we can't arrest a bad guy in the safety and security of the county jail, then we'll arrest him in the community, and we'll arrest him in the jail. And when we arrest him in the community, if he's with others that are in the country illegally, they're coming too. Sanctuary cities are sanctuaries for criminals. President Trump is not going to tolerate it. And I'll work every day with Secretary Noem to make sure we get as many bad guys, illegal aliens out of this country that we can. And I want to say one more thing. I'm sick and tired of reading in the media every day how ICE is not doing what the Trump administration has promised, that we're not arresting criminals, that most of the people we arrest are not criminals. I look at the numbers every day. The numbers I looked at the other day, 130,000 arrests and 90,000 criminals. Do the math, that's 70%. And who are the others? Others are those who have final orders, who had due process at great taxpayer expense. A federal judge ordered them removed, so ICE's job is to remove them. Who are the rest of the people? National security threats. Under Secretary Noem's leadership, they've arrested several hundred Iranian nationals. National security threats. They may not have a criminal conviction, but they need to be detained. They need to be arrested and taken off the streets of this country. Then I read another story about how most people in ICE detention aren't criminals. Now the story is, how bad of a criminal they have to be. I saw a story the other day. Only 1% of the illegal aliens removed were murderers. Are you kidding me? Being in the country illegally is not illegal anymore? You got to commit a murder to be deported? If you look at ICE detention, I'll say it again. Look at detention. Who's in detention? I look at the numbers this morning. A majority are criminals, have criminal history. Who are the rest? Final order cases, who are judge ordered removed. The others are expedited removal by federal statute demands they be detained. So for the media out there, let's try telling the truth about the men and women at ICE and the men and women of the Border Patrol. I wore that uniform. I was an ICE agent. These are the finest men and women in this country that put their lives on the line every day for this country. I buried Border Patrol agents. I buried ICE agents. Luckily, thank God, we're not burying one today. Enough. I love the men and women of ICE. I love the men and women of the Border Patrol. They're finally doing the job they took an oath to do, and they got a great leadership of Secretary Noem, who's going to enforce the law without apology. I appreciate your leadership, man. That's all.
Good morning. Diane Sabatino, Acting Executive Assistant Commissioner, Office of Field Operations. First, I certainly want to express my heartfelt thanks to Secretary Noem, Commissioner Scott, and Border Czar Homan for the incredible support they've demonstrated for the New York Field Office of Field Operations the last couple of days. It is a tragic scenario to get a phone call about an officer, any CBP, Customs and Border Protection employee that's injured in the line of duty. It was even more tragic, this individual off duty. They picked the wrong guy in this particular case, two assailants, just a crime of opportunity. Unfortunately, and I apologize, I'm a bit overwhelmed. I saw the officer this morning, and having met him before and seeing how challenged our officers are in taking care of each other during this hard time. But just to get back to what I was saying, they picked the wrong individual to try to rob. And thank God, when we invest in our CBP officers, we invest in training, we invest in vigilance 24/7. Our officers and our agents stand watch 24/7 on the front line of the United States of America. And we'll take action, and we'll demonstrate that vigilance and dedication at any opportunity.
That's great. Thank you. Go ahead, Frank.
Morning, everyone. My name is Frank Russo. I'm the Director of Field Operations for U.S. Customs and Border Protection in the New York Field Office. We sit on a historical site. This building, One World Trade Center, sits on the very footprint of our old custom house. We were here from 1973 until 9/11. The memorial fountains that sit outside this window remind us of the attacks on 9/11. We have employees who were here for the first attack in 1993. They were here for the attack on 9/11, and they're back again. Our officer who was attacked on Saturday night embodies all the courage and resiliency of all our employees in CBP who are here in the New York field office. And our hearts are with him and his family as he recovers. And we ask that you all pray with us for his quick recovery. These acts, as the Secretary, Commissioner, Assistant Commissioner, Mr. Holman mentioned, should not have happened. And we need your help to make sure that they don't happen again. We thank you all for being here. I want to thank the Secretary, Borders-Czar Holman, Commissioner Scott, Assistant Commissioner Sabatino, and our partners at HSI and ERO for supporting us during these difficult times. Thank you, everyone.
Again, we want to continue to lift up this family and our officer in our prayers. We're thinking of him and had the opportunity to visit with them this morning. They're doing well, but they do appreciate the outreach that they've had from the city, from all of the different agencies, the nonprofits that have reached out and have been willing to help them and walk alongside of them. But they also recognize, when I asked them if there was anything that they needed, they said, go after these criminals. One of the things he would have appreciated the most is if you doubled down on these bad guys that perpetuate crimes like these and even use these mopeds to commit their crimes and are well known for using them throughout the city, to go out and to rob poor innocent people who are out enjoying an evening on the town with their family members. So we will continue to take that encouragement to go after criminals in this country, and especially those who have perpetuated acts like this that shouldn't be here and should never have been here. I want to remind you that this individual had been arrested 4 different times before this act happened on Saturday night. Arrested and released again and again and again. And what did we think was going to happen from policies like that? When you take a dangerous individual and you allow them to never face any consequences for the acts that they're perpetuating against the public, and then you end up in a situation that could have been prevented. So we're lifting that family up in prayer. We're going to walk alongside them, but also we're going to double down and make sure that these criminal, illegal aliens are not only off our streets, but they're out of our country. And that once again, America can be a country where the rule of law matters, where the laws apply to everyone equally, and never once is an illegal alien put above an American citizen or their safety and their opportunity to have the American dream. So with that, we'll open it up to any questions that you may have. Yes, sir.
If you could talk about, what you plan to do here in New York, talk about ramping up some of that enforcement, and 2, how do you make this push to get more ICE agents? I saw on social media the push to get back some folks who may have retired, folks who know how to do that work. What's it going to take to get those?
Yeah, we've already had some retired agents that have indicated they'd like to come back and help. They love the opportunity to come back and work for an agency that's allowed to do its job. Under this administration, President Trump is allowing our ICE and our CBP officers, our law enforcement officers, to do their jobs again, and that's reinvigorating them and their desire to want to be a part of a team where someone's got their backs. What we'll do in a city like this is we'll double down. We'll put more agents here. We'll put more personnel here. We'll give them more equipment, more training for situations where they may have to go into a dangerous neighborhood where local law enforcement won't be there to have their backs. And we'll continue to talk to the public about the truth of what we're doing. The media has lied over and over and over again about what President Trump has given us as direction to do in this country when it comes to criminal illegal aliens. We have prioritized them. They are our targets. We're going to go after those individuals that are perpetuating crimes in our country and remove them and get them out and have them face consequences for what they're doing. So what you will see when you have a mayor like this, a city council like this, that's allowing their people to be victimized, is that we will follow through on our promises. We'll put more people here, more agents, more resources, and we'll have more federal agencies deployed in task force models so that they can go out and do their operations and do them safely. Yes, sir.
Secretary, on targeting violent people, Mr. Holman just said we're going to flood the community, and if there are people in the country illegally not accused of crimes, we'll pick them up too. We've seen outside immigration court here in New York City people still with pending green card claims, pending asylum claims are grabbed right outside of court. So my question is this: I understand you say you're targeting mostly violent people. Are you not undercutting your own argument when you arrest those other?
Absolutely not. What we're doing is we're targeting those individuals that are perpetuators of crimes in this country, those who have final removal orders, those who have undergone due process and are needing to be removed from this country. We will do that. The biggest problem we have here in this city is that they don't honor our detainers, is that they're releasing people out of the court system, out of jails, and we have detainers against them, and local law enforcement isn't cooperating with us to honor those so that we can get these individuals off the streets. So we're going to continue to do that work every day, but it would be much safer for law enforcement, much safer for the public if we could do it in partnership with local law enforcement. And we do that across the country. In so many states, we have agreements with city police, with sheriffs, with local law enforcement who partner with us to make sure our officers can be safe while they do this work, and we can clean up communities that are victims of crime. Unfortunately, here in New York City, it's a different situation, because here people play politics and then you have innocent people get hurt, and that shouldn't happen anymore.
Just to be clear,
Yes, ma'am.
so many of those arrests,
Yes, ma'am.
not accused of criminals, if law enforcement, not accused of crimes, local law enforcement cooperate, that's what you're saying?
It depends on if you're talking about those who have charges against them, those who have pending charges, those who have final removal orders. Those all continue to be our focus as well. Go ahead. Yes.
Yesterday we learned the suspect, Miguel Francisco Mora Nunez, was once deported and then re-entered the country illegally through the Arizona border sector. Can you explain how and why that was able to happen?
Well, if you look at what happened during the Biden administration, which is when he entered this country, was that basically anyone who crossed the border was granted an asylum and given a notice to appear in court, and he never did. Never showed up, of course, which was happened with millions of individuals who came into our country. And that's the task that we now have under the Trump administration, is cleaning up the ramifications of that invasion of our country. Remember, people came to this country through an open border and those policies that were terrorists, suspected terrorists, people who were violent criminals from across the world, individuals who were emptied out of prisons and mental institutions, and they came to this country, and Joe Biden and his administration just opened the door and let them flood in. The individuals that perpetuated this crime and violence against our law enforcement officer on Saturday night and his friend were two of those exact same type of individuals that crossed the border under those policies. They shouldn't have been here. They had been arrested in the past and released again. I'm thankful we have a president now who's not going to allow that to happen anymore. Yes, sir.
The arrest of the second suspect, what's his immigration status?
He's an illegal in this country as well. And so he has been brought in. Excuse me? He was detained earlier today and was brought in. It's a case that we will continue to work, but he was a part of this robbery on Saturday night, and hopefully he will face full consequences for being a part of that.
Entered under Biden also.
He did. They both entered under Joe Biden's policies. And we're grateful for the work of our HSI individuals who were able to go out there and partner with other agencies to bring him in this morning. Yes, sir.
Are there going to be any federal consequences for, I mean, you clearly laid the blame at the feet of our mayor and our legislature.
And your city council.
And our city council.
Yes.
Are there going to be any federal consequences for courts that continue to release migrants who are not only here illegally, but have committed or are charged with committing violent predicate felonies?
Well, I just want them to know that we will use every tool at our disposal that we have the authority to under the federal government to bring safety to the people of New York City and to other sanctuary cities across this country. One thing I would encourage the public to do is to continue to speak out for safety, for the ability to walk their kids to school in the morning, for the ability to sleep at home at night safely and not have to worry about violent crime happening right outside of their doorsteps. I've been here in the city several times doing different operations with our ICE officers, with HSI officers, and it's amazing to me how you can be out on the street early in the morning while we're incarcerating many of these individuals who perpetuate violent crimes, and the citizens who live in those neighborhoods walk by us and they say, "Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for helping us. Nobody would help us, and we've had to live like this for years. Thank you for giving us the chance to be able to walk down our street again without having to worry about who's going to attack us, who might hurt our children, or what might happen to our small business today. That's our mission every day, is to make sure that we're not going to do what Joe Biden did or what these sanctuary politicians do. They decide who has to be a victim and who doesn't be a victim when they pick and choose who they're going to uphold the law against and who they're not going to. And many times their policies have treated illegal criminals better than they have U.S. citizens. It's wrong and it needs to stop. And this situation on Saturday night where our officer was shot and wounded and hurt and is in the ICU right now in the hospital fighting for his life, that had to happen because it shouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have happened if we would have had the right leadership in this city. Yes.
Hi, I'm Elaine with the New York Times. I'm curious, which sanctuary city policies do you think would have prevented this from happening? And was there an ICE detainer for the man who was arrested?
I can't speak directly if there was an ICE detainer out against this individual right at this time, but he had been arrested 4 different times, had several charges against him. If you remember, I spoke about his charges in Massachusetts as well for kidnapping. He had charges against him for larceny. This individual should have been deported and never been in this country, and that is one of the individuals that should have been prosecuted for his crimes, and then he would have been on our radar and we would have been able to remove him.
And if I could, there was a detainer. Yes. But the issue, as the Secretary said, he was arrested at least 3 or 4 times by NYPD, but they're not allowed to work with ICE on your sanctuary city policies. That's what the Secretary's getting to. Cops should be working with the cops. This should be a nonpartisan issue. Cops working with the cops to keep New York safe. We're not asking them to be immigration officers. We're asking them to help us remove public safety threat illegal aliens from this country, but NYPD is not allowed to do that, and that's exactly what happened in this case.
Have you spoken with Mayor Adams about this, and what was his response?
We have spoken with him about the policies before and asked him to change those policies. There's times that the NYPD, and I believe that's still in place, that if one of our officers is in jeopardy, they're still backing us up on that, but not doing operations with us, which does happen in many other cities and other jurisdictions. We wish we had that kind of partnership with Mayor Adams, and I know you guys have got a leadership election in this country or in this city that's going to be happening soon. Boy, start looking at the candidates today and see which one is going to start making this city safer, because you've got a mayor today that could have done better, and maybe he'd have more support today if he'd have put his people first.
If you look at Commander Shell of NYPD did an op-ed last night that I read, and I saw him doing an interview this morning. He's got 4 decades NYPD. Even he spoke up, said this should never have happened. NYPD should be working with ICE on criminal aliens.
I heard you endorse any of the candidates for mayor.
No, that's not what we're here today about. We're here today to focus on our officer, his family, and to make sure that everybody understands that this didn't have to happen, and that we want more cooperation out of local law enforcement so that we can get dangerous, criminal, illegal aliens off of our streets. Who's talking? Yes, sir.
I see Mr. Clayton here. You intended to take this case federal. Jay, would you like to go?
Let me say 2 things.
Thank you.
I want to say 2 things. First, for the last 36 hours, I've watched the people who work under all of you work tirelessly to bring this case. We are expecting to bring federal charges. The second thing that I want to say is the commitment of the federal government, the U.S. Attorney's Office, all of our partners, to end gun violence in New York is as strong as it ever has been, and we are going to do that.
I'll take one more question. Look at that. All right, we won't. Thank you all. And then please keep our officer and his family in your prayers. Have a good day.
All right, here we go. Update on
right now to this
Barack
Director of National
Obama's
Intelligence
administration by the DNI. Here we go.
Released a report she says is one of the biggest political scandals in recent history. The Trump-Russia investigation. She claims after Donald Trump won the 2016 presidential election, Obama-era officials undertook an administration-wide campaign to discredit him. The DNI director spoke on Sunday Morning Futures.
We had a sitting president of the United States and his cabinet and leadership team, quite frankly, who were not happy with the fact that President Trump had won the election. And so they decided that they would do everything possible to try to undermine his ability to do what voters tasked President Trump to do.
All right, joining us now, Fox News contributor Mark Thiessen. Good morning to you. Mark, what is new in all these documents, this blitz of documents released Friday?
Yeah, so this is really very important to get to the bottom of this, because this is one of the worst political scandals of our lifetime. We spent 2 years and tens of millions of dollars investigating what turned out to be a conspiracy theory, which is that Donald Trump colluded with Russia to steal the 2016 election. And it turned out it wasn't true. And there were a lot of Democrats were pushing this. A lot of people in the media were pushing it. But what was most insidious were the people in the intelligence community who would basically were telling the American people a pernicious lie, which is you can't see it, but we've seen secret intelligence that suggests that the president was conspiring with Russia to steal the election, and it wasn't true. Brennan was one of the worst people involved in this. He called Trump a traitor, said he committed treason, that he was an agent of the Russian regime, and this is really bad because it calls into question the intelligence community's credibility. And so we got to get to the bottom of who did this, who was behind it, and find out why and call them out.
You know, Democrats in the intelligence community and who work on intel issues on Capitol Hill say there's nothing to see here. This is all just more on something we've already heard 100 times. Here's Jim Himes. Take a listen.
What you saw from the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, was not just a lie, but a very dangerous lie, because when you start throwing around language like sedition and treason, somebody's going to get hurt.
What's your response to that, Mark?
So, I'm sorry, John Brennan accused Donald Trump of treason. Adam Schiff accused Donald Trump of treason. Eric Swalwell said he was an agent of a foreign power. So for them to say that Tulsi Gabbard is politicizing intelligence, they weaponized intelligence against the president of the United States. And look, there's two different things that are going on here. There's the question of whether Russia tried to interfere in the 2016 election, which they did.
Right.
And I would remind everyone that Donald Trump launched a cyber attack against the troll farm in St. Petersburg responsible for that election interference. So Donald Trump actually was the one taking that more seriously than the Democrats. Barack Obama didn't do that. But there's the question of whether Donald Trump conspired with Russia in that interference to help it to steal the election, which has been proven to be an absolute lie. And the Democrats pushed that lie. All Blumenthal, Warner, Schiff, Swalwell all went out and said there was evidence, secret evidence, that Donald Trump had conspired with Russia, and it wasn't true. And we need to find out what the source of those lies are. What were they seeing, if they did see anything in the intelligence community that turned out to be false, so we can restore the credibility of the intelligence community.
Well, look, some Democrats have pointed out that the origin, as you mentioned there, was really this intelligence that appeared to show at the time that the Russian president, at least, favored Donald Trump's election over that of Hillary Clinton, and that some political figures took that, perverted it, and made it a collusion.
Yeah, so CIA Director Ratcliffe actually just put out a report on this. And if you look at that report, the evidence for the interference, the idea that they were interfering in the election is clear, but whether they favored Trump, a lot of that was driven by the Steele dossier. And there was a huge fight within the intelligence community about whether to include the Steele dossier, which was paid for by the Clinton campaign, which was political opposition research that turned out to be untrue, to include that in the intelligence assessment of the intelligence agencies. And it was the FBI and Brennan who were pushing to include it, and the intelligence professionals who were saying that it shouldn't be in there. So we need to get to the bottom of that as well.
All right, you can check out those documents. They are now publicly available online, anywhere you get your news.
Intelligence professionals who are saying that it shouldn't be in there. So we need to get to the bottom of that as well.
All right, you can check out those documents. They are now publicly available online, anywhere you get your news, including foxnews.com. Thanks so much. Appreciate it, Mark.
I'm Steve Doocy. I'm Brian Kill.
All right. So, of course, like we all know, the DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, she came up with the declassified information concerning the Russia hoax that the Obama administration allegedly has been some way, shape, or form been, I guess, hiding from the American people. But of course, CNN has no information concerning that. But for the liberals and the Democrat in the chat, we're gonna go to CNN right now. Like I always say, it's not Republicans first, it's not Democrat first, it is America first. I don't care your party, okay? I don't care about your party. It is country before parties. It's not parties before country, okay? So stay united, all right? That's what they want. They want you guys to be distracted and divided. But if you come together as Americans first before your parties, you would have a better life. All right, here we go. CNN.
She is the
This morning, the Trump administration is facing more fallout from their handling of the Jeffrey Epstein case. Calls growing louder within Congress, for one, for Ghislaine Maxwell, the longtime Epstein associate who was convicted of child sex trafficking offenses related to the investigation, calling for her to testify about what she knows. Conversation now around that. And now attorney Alan Dershowitz, who was once an attorney for Jeffrey Epstein, says that he believes Maxwell would be willing to testify before Congress if given use immunity.
She knows everything. She is the Rosetta Stone. She knows everything. She arranged every single trip with everybody. She knows everything. And if she were just given use immunity, she could be compelled to testify. I'm told that she actually would be willing to testify, and there'd be no reason for her to withhold any information.
Adding to the spectacle now, after that, a source close to Maxwell told CNN that she has not had any discussions about testifying before Congress, and also that Alan Dershowitz has had no contact with her. Joining us right now is CNN senior legal analyst Ellie Honig for much more on this. Let's start with this piece, and then I want to ask you more about what could be released with all these calls of having more of the investigation released. You are skeptical that Maxwell would agree to testify before Congress. Why?
Yeah, I'm extremely skeptical, Kate, despite whatever Professor Dershowitz says. So first of all, if Ghislaine Maxwell was willing to come clean and testify truthfully, why would she not have done that at any point in the last 4+ years while her prosecution was ongoing? Because had she tried to testify and cooperate at any point during that time, she would have been in position potentially to help herself. Instead, she refused to talk. She went to trial. She got convicted. She got sentenced to 20 years, and she has made no indication of willingness to talk. Also, keep in mind, part of the initial indictment against Ghislaine Maxwell points out that she lied under oath. She was deposed under oath in a civil case, and she outright denied knowing anything about Jeffrey Epstein trafficking minors or her own involvement in trafficking minors. So she's not exactly a bastion of credibility, and I am not going to hold my breath for the day where she takes an oath and testifies truthfully in front of Congress.
I want to read for everyone the full quote from this source close to Ghislaine Maxwell, kind of it seems like batting this down. Here's the quote. While Dershowitz is brilliant, he does not represent Ms. Maxwell and has had no contact with her. There has been no discussion about her testifying before Congress. Her only counsel of record right now is fighting her case before the Supreme Court. On this, what is use immunity? How much protection would it give her if this whole thing would come together, considering that she's clearly fighting the conviction?
Right. So Professor Dershowitz is sort of thinking ahead to the legal chess game that might hypothetically break out if there was some effort by Congress. The way this would work is Congress would subpoena Ghislaine Maxwell. And again, I'm skeptical any of this is going to happen. But Congress would subpoena Ghislaine Maxwell. She then, if she had any kind of decent lawyer, would take the fifth, because even though she's been convicted of sex trafficking of children, there potentially would be other charges that could be brought against her. She could be charged in the state. She would absolutely have a right to invoke the fifth. The counter move to that is what Professor Dershowitz is talking about, where Congress has the ability to immunize somebody, meaning, okay, we're going to force you to testify, but your testimony is not going to be used against you in any future criminal proceeding. So in theory, that could compel her to testify. But again, I think her response would be, too bad. Like, I'm already doing 20 years. Why would I care about a citation for contempt of Congress? And again, why would anyone think Ghislaine Maxwell is suddenly going to come clean and tell the truth now?
Very important perspective. With this request, though, now from the Justice Department to now release the grand jury testimony in the Epstein investigation. I mean, how long do you think it will be before this is decided? And once it is decided, how long before things would be released if that is what is decided?
Yeah, so the case is now in the hands of Judge Richard Berman, a federal judge in the Southern District of New York. I appeared in front of him many times. He's a good judge. He's down the middle. He works hard to get it right, and I don't think he will let this drag out too long. A couple important things to understand. One, even if this request is granted, even if the judge says, go ahead and unseal grand jury testimony, that is going to be a sliver of the overall file. Could be important, but it will be a narrow sliver of the overall file. The other thing is, if you actually look at the grand jury secrecy rules, there are some exceptions on the books where you can unseal and make public or give to somebody else part of the record. But none of those apply here. Those all basically say if some party in another lawsuit needs them, if there's a defendant who's been charged elsewhere who needs these documents to make a motion to dismiss. And if you look at DOJ's motion that went in on Friday, they acknowledge that. They say basically, Judge, we understand none of these exceptions really apply, but we're kind of asking you for an all-purpose exception because there's such massive public interest here. So I genuinely don't know what Judge Berman's going to do. Neither outcome would surprise me, but the reality is we're going to see little of the file if he does agree to release it and none if he does not.
As the scandal, the fallout continues over the Epstein scandal, Epstein co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell could testify in front of a congressional committee. Maxwell, you may recall, was sentenced to 20 years in prison for carrying out a years-long scheme to groom and facilitate the sexual abuse of underage girls. Well, now a former lawyer for Jeffrey Epstein is pushing for her immunity in exchange for testimony.
She is the Rosetta Stone. She knows everything. She arranged every single trip with everybody. She knows everything. And if she were just given use immunity, she could be compelled to testify. And there'd be no reason for her to withhold any information. So I don't see any negative in giving her the kind of use immunity that would compel her to testify.
CNN legal analyst Joey Jackson joining me now. Good to see you, my friend. Practically speaking, should there be some sort of a deal, should she agree to testify here, what more do you anticipate we would learn from Ghislaine Maxwell?
Yeah, Erica, good morning to you. I think this could be extraordinarily significant. The answer to your question is everything. Why do I say that? She's known, certainly, as we see in the pictures there, to be a person who was close to Jeffrey Epstein, to be his girlfriend, to be his enabler, to be whatever it is that people might classify her to be. At the end of the day, though, we know she was there when the deal was made and hand is shook, so to speak. She can tell you the who, what, when, where, how, why, etc. And therefore, I think she would be a wealth of information in the event there was a deal struck and she presented testimony before Congress, Erica.
What about, too, this push for the grand jury testimony and what that would actually reveal, which is far less?
Yes, so I think that's a complete farce. It's disingenuous and it's ridiculous, quite frankly. Why do I say all those things? We have to keep in mind that a grand jury sits and they don't determine guilt or innocence. They just determine two things. Number one, whether there's reasonable cause to believe that a crime was committed, and number two, that the subject of that proceeding committed it. There are 23 grand jurors. A simple majority, that is 12, can vote out an indictment. When you're a prosecutor bringing forth a case before the grand jury, as I have, what you do is you just present enough legally sufficient information to give them an indictment. And that means that you give them bare bones. And as we look at that picture there, and that information is specific as to the defendant, you're not being all-inclusive to present information which the public wants to know with respect to who else might have been involved, what were they doing, where were they, how were they. So it will not give you the breadth of information. I think that that's something that's a shiny object, but it's a shiny object that's a distraction, and it's not fair, I don't think, to the American people, particularly, Erica, when the motion saying, hey, release the grand jury minutes talks about transparency. If you want transparency, guess what? There's a file in the Department of Justice, or is there? Because according to the memo, there's not, after they said there was. But if you want transparency, release that document. That'll tell you what needs to be done. It'll tell you who was where, what was why, who was involved, if anyone. And I think that's the information you need. And you could do it in terms of redacting, that is really blacking out information that would be harmful to any potential victim.
You know, to that point, Joey, is there a broader impact that either you are seeing or that you are concerned you may see when it comes to not just the Department of Justice, but frankly, to legal cases moving forward that may have an outcome that people don't like, right? You don't have to like it or agree with it to have it be a finding. I mean, is there a broader impact here based on what we've seen, the back and forth from the Justice Department?
So there always is, Erica, right? I mean, law is based on precedent, and you have to be careful what you do because it sets a precedent for tomorrow, next week, next year, the year after. But at the end of the day, what courts are about is they're about justice, and why you would release information and a file is about that very issue. If you look at the motion, it's predicated on the standard. Why would you release secret information? Because there's a public imperative, because it fits into the interest of justice, because inquiring minds want to know. And in a democracy, this is not about secrets. This is about doing what's fair, what's adequate, what's appropriate. And you have a number of people who are clamoring for information. So, right, to revert back to the point, why not, according to, right, Mr. Dershowitz, give her use immunity? What is use immunity? Use immunity is anything Ms. Maxwell might say before Congress couldn't be used against her. Any information derived from any statement couldn't be used against her. I think that could be certainly something that's compelling. Last point, Eric, and that's this. Of course, she'll be assailed because she's an interested witness. She's doing 20 years. She's appealing before the Supreme Court. But there's an interesting thing in law, Erica. It's called corroboration. So everything she says, if you vet it, right, whatever you say, is there a text message to support it? Is there an email? Is there surveillance? Is there a photo? Is there a document? Are there flight records? All of that stuff. Are there other witnesses? I think information could be vetted such that you could determine if there's a grain of truth. And if there is, let the truth and justice lie where it may.
Joey Jackson, always appreciate it, my friend. Thank you.
And out to Joey Jackson, always giving the sauce. But more information on the Epstein situation. Here we go. But the truth here is the Trump administration ratings keeps on going up. The left kept on peddling this Epstein situation. Of course, I know his name is Jeffrey Epstein, okay? But I call him Epstein, all right? Yeah, that's it. So the left kept on peddling this Epstein situation in hopes that it's going to tank Donald Trump's approval rating. Unfortunately for them, it keeps, or it's just making his ratings go higher because every other thing that the people voted him for, which is the border, foreign policies, ending wars, making sure that inflation comes down, stock market, renegotiating trade deals, tariffs, all of those things, he's done it. Okay, he has done it. And he's still working on, of course, Russia and Ukraine. However, the Epstein situation is not collapsing the Trump administration. I don't think anything can actually collapse this man's administration.
Polls show that Americans are paying attention to the recent revelations in the Epstein case. CNN chief data analyst Harry Enton now with what the numbers tell us about how the public and the president's base feel about the story that won't seem to go away.
Interest in the Epstein files and the Epstein case is sky high, and the American public does not trust what the government is selling them. What are we talking about here? Is the government hiding Epstein's alleged client list? Get this, 69% of Americans agree that the federal government is, in fact, hiding Epstein's alleged client list versus just 6% who say that they are not. And get this, a majority of Republicans and Democrats do, in fact, agree on this issue that the government is hiding Epstein's alleged client list. You can never get a majority of Republicans and Democrats to agree on anything, but they do agree on this particular issue. And perhaps not so surprisingly, you get a plurality of Democrats and Republicans agreeing that they are dissatisfied with the amount of information that the government has released so far. What are we talking about this? Well, we're talking about, if we look at Republicans and independents who lean Republican, 43% are dissatisfied with the amount of information released so far, compared to, get this, just 4% of Republicans who are in fact satisfied with the amount of information released so far by the federal government when it comes to the Epstein case. And we look over here on this side of the screen among Democrats, get this, 60% of Democrats and independent-leaning Democrats are, in fact, dissatisfied with the amount of information released so far. And get this, just 1, 2, 3% of Democrats are, in fact, satisfied so far with the amount of information released. Now, you see this. You see that the plurality of Republicans are dissatisfied. So how is it impacting President Trump's overall approval rating? Republicans who approve of the job that Donald Trump is doing. Get this, in our CNN SSRS poll, it was 86% prior to this whole Epstein saga. Now, it's 88%. In fact, the percentage of Republicans who approve of the job that Donald Trump is doing has actually, if anything, climbed a little bit according to our CNN polling. How about Quinnipiac? 87% before this whole Epstein saga started approved of the job that Donald Trump was doing among Republicans. Now, it's 90%. So we see agreement between the CNN polling and the Quinnipiac polling. Yes, Republicans are not thrilled with how the government is responding to the Epstein case, but so far they are, in fact, not taking it out on Donald Trump, at least when it comes to his overall approval rating. Now, you might be asking yourself, why? Well, I think this nugget gives it all away. Republicans who said the nation's top issue was the Epstein case, get this, 0, 1. One respondent, not 1%, one respondent of Republicans said that the nation's top issue was, in fact, the Epstein case. What we're dealing with is a public that is very much dissatisfied with how the government is responding so far to the Epstein case. A lot of folks, both on the right and the left, do, in fact, believe that the government is hiding Epstein's alleged client list, but yet when it comes to his approval rating, Donald Trump's approval rating with the Republican base, so far they're sticking with him because at this point, even if they believe the government is potentially hiding something, they don't think it's all that important.
It is, of course, the story that President Trump just can't seem to shake as the calls grow louder from both the public and across the aisle for the Department of Justice to release more information in the Jeffrey Epstein case. Over the weekend, Mr. Trump calling the case the, quote, Jeffrey Epstein hoax, blaming Democrats and what he calls troublemakers for the controversy. Meantime, the growing number of lawmakers demanding action on a resolution co-sponsored by Kentucky Republican Thomas Massie and California progressive Ro Khanna. That push would force the full House to vote, yes or no, on releasing the Epstein case files. Among the co-signers, 16 lawmakers who typically would not agree on, frankly, much of anything, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Marjorie Taylor Greene. Another co-signer, Republican Tim Burch of Tennessee, says the recent decision by the Trump administration to try to unseal grand jury testimony is just the beginning.
On my bill to release the Epstein files, not only do I have Republican Thomas Massie, I got Marjorie Taylor Greene, I got Lauren Boebert, I got Tim Buttigieg.
I applaud the president for wanting to release those files. I think it's a good start. I caution America, though, if we need to have some sort of way to filter out the innocents in these things.
Facts.
Democrats really leaning into this moment as a way to needle the president after 6 months of a presidency which has largely dismantled any opposition attempting to stand in Trump's way.
So the president blaming Democrats for this disaster, Jake, is like that CEO that got caught on camera blaming Coldplay, okay? Like, this is his making.
It all comes back to the Kiss camp, but we're going to hold that for a little bit later in the show. Joining me now to discuss, Isaac Dovere, CNN senior reporter, Sarah Fisher, CNN media analyst, and Michael Warren, senior editor at The Dispatch. Good to see all of you bright and early on this Monday morning. Isaac, when we start with these efforts that we're seeing here, these bipartisan efforts in the House, there's the question of whether or not you can get enough yes votes. There's also the question of what does this actually do?
Yeah, and this is something that will take time, and time may not be in favor of those who want this to go away. Even if the grand jury testimony is released, that could take weeks, it could take longer, and all along the way we have just conversations about this, questions about it, and it's clearly not going the way that some people want it to, even as the president has tried to say stop talking about this and tell his allies in politics and conservative media to stop talking about it. I mean, I was really struck by last night, Mike Johnson was on with Mark Levin, the conservative host, and said that he was agreeing that we can't waste our time on Epstein and other stuff going on here. That's what Levin was saying. Johnson was agreeing. This was Johnson just last Tuesday. He said it's a very delicate subject, but we should put everything out there and let the people decide it. That's the pickle that people who have really engaged in this conspiracy for years find themselves in here. They've talked it up. They've said that there's more stuff, and now that the president is there going in saying that he was going to get all this stuff released, and J.D. Vance and Kash Patel and all the rest, they have to figure out how they're going to say that there's not more stuff to release.
Isaac points out, you point out an important point, right? That there is still potentially weeks to come just because of the calendar of all things. And to that point, Michael, as we look at where things stand, despite all of these efforts and maybe distraction with other stories or, simply the president trying to dictate by Truth Social post, it's remarkable that none of that seems to be working.
It is that you would think all the things that Donald Trump's supporters have been maybe at odds with or in contradiction or some sort of cognitive dissonance with Donald Trump, he's been able to overcome that. This is different, I think, in some ways, partly because Donald Trump is, at this point, a lame duck president. There's no other election for him to run in. And I think a lot of people are thinking about what happens after he's gone. It's also something that's really become sort of a core tenet, almost a quasi-religious belief among a certain portion, a very vocal portion of his base. And that's not so easy to wave away. Look, I think there are a lot of people taking advantage, say on the Democratic side, of that cognitive dissonance and trying to sort of poke fun at this. But we're also getting in kind of a dangerous territory here where the conspiracy theories begin to, you start making fun, you start sort of poking and saying, hey, look at this contradiction. And then you start sort of feeding into those same conspiracy theories that there's something here. The basic facts of the case are already out there. I have some questions specifically about Jeffrey Epstein's 2008 plea deal with the Department of Justice. That's something that would be interesting, but the sort of more titillating aspects of this, we know what the story is. We know what he did. We know what Ghislaine Maxwell did. She's in jail right now because of it. There's not much more there, but these politicians can't help themselves in playing into it. And I think it's a real problem on both sides of the aisle here.
Sarah, somewhat to that point, it is really something how this is gaining steam on a much broader or with a much broader audience, right, than where it initially began. In fact, my colleague Brian Selter pointing out that a search of Epstein's name on YouTube filtered only to show videos uploaded in the last week found more than 40 with more than 1 million views each, a number of them featuring late-night TV hosts roasting Trump. But the fact that this has found such a broader audience and has some staying power also speaks to the narrative in many ways.
Absolutely. So when you take a look at the issue that's at the core of the Epstein case, there's actually two. One is child exploitation, which has always been such an issue on the right and amongst Trump's base. And then the other is deep state cover-up, right? Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, ahead of entering the FBI, a big rallying cry was the deep state, the government is trying to cover this up. And so this was a core case for the MAGA right. And how this has evolved is Democrats are now seizing on this issue because, to Michael's point, when there's a lack of information or it looks like there's information being covered up, that's the best way for conspiracies to fester. And Democrats are seizing on that opportunity, seizing on some of these conspiracies to try to put pressure on the president. This has now then created a situation where this topic, this story, is hot on both sides of the political aisle. Both sides have something to politically gain from it. And so that's why, in part, it's becoming so viral. I also think that this is one of those things where every time Donald Trump or an ally tries to, fan the flames and say there's nothing to see here, it motivates people to say, hey, wait a minute, I think there is something to see here. And so I don't think that this is going away from the news cycle anytime soon. And just to the point at the top about this lingering, Isaac was saying this, you have Congress coming back to vote if they were to do something, Ro Khanna and Massey, in September. We are still in July, Erica, so this is like 6 to 8 weeks where this is going to continue to build up until Congress, if they do, can take any action on it.
All right, here we go.
Today marks half a year since President Trump took office again. And already his second term is shaping up to be even more consequential than his first. The president has followed through on promises to ramp up deportations, impose tariffs, target his political enemies, including the news media, reduce the federal bureaucracy, and slash U.S. aid to foreign countries, even as he does fall short on some promises, such as the one to immediately end wars in Ukraine and the Middle East, to fully preserve Medicaid, to end inflation, and, very notable this past week, his administration's early vow to fully release all of the Epstein files. Trump this morning said in these 6 months he, quote, totally revived a major country, unquote. The Democratic National Committee, not surprisingly, has a different take, saying this half year mark means your life is worse off unless, quote, you're a billionaire licking your lips over a tax windfall or a CEO receiving fat government contracts. But what about the American people? What do the American people think? A new CNN poll this week shows 58% of the American people disapprove of the president's job performance. And in fact, the president appears to be losing ground among voters on some key issues that have historically been his strengths, such as handling of the economy and immigration. But if there is one thing the president has always been able to count on, it is the enthusiastic support of his base. That support in question this week, however, as the president tried to brush off the controversy over a decision to not release the full Justice Department files on disgraced pedophile and sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. But after fierce blowback from his base, President Trump did call for the release of some Epstein grand jury material. Joining me now is a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Democrat Amy Klobuchar from the great state of Minnesota. Thank you for joining us, Senator. Appreciate it. So right now, we're in the middle of a procedure. The president, frustrated with this issue, has asked his Attorney General Pam Bondi to release what he calls the pertinent grand jury testimony from cases involving Epstein and his longtime associate Ghislaine Maxwell, who's in prison. That information, however, even if it's released, will only be about crimes committed by Epstein and Maxwell, and experts say it will almost certainly not mention the other wealthy and powerful individuals who may have gotten away with crimes that they were not charged with. You're a former prosecutor. What do you think is responsible to be released?
Well, Jake, this has gotten to the point because of promises made by the president. By the way, another host of promises not kept, whether he promised he was bringing prices down, he has not, promised he would keep people on Medicaid, they're getting kicked off, and now promises that they're going to release these Epstein files made while they were in office, while the Attorney General was in office. Promises made by the man who is now the FBI director. So you get to a point, and this is how I view it as a former prosecutor, you have to protect the victims if you release documents. That's fairly easy to do. You just redact the names of victims, and you've seen documents like that before. But this has gotten to the point where they have just sown distrust in the justice system. They promised that these documents would be out there. They literally gave people binders that said Part 1, and now suddenly, with a whistleblower reporting that 100,000 documents were reviewed by the FBI to look for the president's name, they've suddenly pulled back and said, no, we're not releasing them. So to me, as a former prosecutor, there are times when you release things for the good of the country. This is one of those times, and you don't go and say, oh, we're just going to see if a judge will let us do part of the evidence, part of the files that are over here in this grand jury proceeding after dissing judges forever. Give me a break.
I want to play something your Senate colleague Ron Wyden of Oregon said on the Senate floor earlier this week.
Somewhere in the Treasury Department, Mr. President, locked away in a cabinet drawer, is a big Epstein file that's full of actionable information. Follow the money details about his financing and operations that await investigation.
Julie Brown, the investigative reporter whose Miami Herald story in 2018 really brought this Epstein case back into the forefront. She says that file of financial records would be a trove of information in terms of finding other guilty parties. Do you think the Treasury Department should release what they have on Epstein too?
Like I said, things should be released. We should know what happened here. And it is a claim that this president has made time and time again, and the American people have the right to know what happened.
So President Trump posted on Truth Social Friday, quote, if there was a smoking gun on Epstein, why didn't the Democrats who controlled the files for 4 years and had Garland and Comey in charge use it because they had nothing, unquote. After the Miami Herald story broke in 2018, you said there was something not right in the Epstein case. But it's true that the president says there, Democrats didn't really seem to do anything about the Epstein files throughout the 4 years of the Biden administration. I mean, should you have? You sit on the Senate Judiciary Committee. Senator Marsha Blackburn for years has been trying to get flight records and other information about Epstein released, and she seems to have been the only one on that committee trying to do so.
So the president blaming Democrats for this disaster, Jake, is like that CEO that got caught on camera blaming Coldplay, okay? Like, this is his making. He was president when Epstein got indicted for these charges and went to prison. He was president when Epstein committed suicide. And then there was another case, as you know, that continued during the Biden administration. But he was president back then, so all of us would believe they know what's in these documents. They know what's there. They've been claiming forever that they should be released. And it is the Trump administration that gave a bunch of binders that said Volume 1 to reporters just in the last month. It is the Trump administration that has made this promise that they're going to release it. So I am blaming Democrats for this. To me, I'm sorry, this is the people that have been fomenting this are right-wing influencers, members of Congress, people who have a reason that they want to know what's in there. They believe the president when he said there's stuff in there that people should see. Wall Street Journal, these are not bastions of liberalism or wild progressives that have come out and said the public have a right to know what is in these documents.
You visited New Hampshire last weekend to campaign for Congressman Chris Pappas in his Senate race. New Hampshire, of course, an early primary state. Now that Joe Biden is no longer in office, New Hampshire goes back to the front of the line. Are you considering at all a presidential run in 2028? And what do Democrats need to do to get your dismal approval ratings up?
I think every Democrat, national Democrat, including myself, is focused on this upcoming election, which is the midterms, okay? That's why I was there to help Chris Pappas, who's a tremendous candidate. And what you've seen is we've got now incredible candidates that are running all over the country. We are going to be focusing on a forward-looking agenda to counteract all the crap that's been going on with this administration. And when you look at the enthusiasm of our voters that are showing up, the people in the middle, moderate Republicans, independents that hate the chaos and the corruption and the costs going up, I am feeling better and better about how Democrats are doing every single day. And the polls show that the president, some of them, including one Fox News poll, similar to some of the things that you've been showing, the president's approval ratings are way underwater when it comes to his handling of the economy. And that's what people are talking about in New Hampshire and Minnesota, any state across the country. They go in the grocery store, and the president can tell them inflation isn't a factor, but they just see the prices going up, a doubling of the price of coffee. That's what they're seeing out there right now. And he can say what he wants. He can do what he wants on Truth Social and blame Fox News when they put a post on and say, hey, we don't like them, except maybe some of their anchors are great, and bully on the media. But the facts are there for the American people the minute they walk into a grocery store.
So 2028, you're not ruling it out, fair to say?
No. I am focused on my job in the Senate, and I'm really focused on our great candidates that are up all across the country. And anyone else that's not doing that right now, I think that they better look at what Donald Trump is doing to our economy and doing to our democracy and our Constitution.
Senator Amy Klobuchar, the great state of Minnesota, thanks so much.
All right, so this lady
Jeffrey Epstein's
here is Jeffrey Epstein's ex, and like I call him, Jepston's ex, and she accused the 45th, now the 47th president of the United States of doing what everybody else has accused him of doing, which is, inappropriate behavior. But all of them has always, all of those rhetoric has always been denied by the president of the United States. So check this out.
Ex-girlfriend speaking out tonight. Stacey Williams, a former Sports Illustrated model who dated Epstein in the early 90s, has spent time with both Epstein and Donald Trump together. In one disturbing alleged incident, which Williams went public with last year before the presidential election, Williams says Trump groped her in front of Epstein at Trump Tower in 1993. Here's what she told our Sunland Serfati when she first broke her silence.
The second he was in front of me, he pulled me into him, and his hands were just on me and didn't come off. Then the hands started moving, and they were on the, on the side of my breasts, on my hips, back down to my butt, back up, sort of then, they were just on me the whole time. And I froze.
Williams also claimed that Epstein and Trump looked at each other and smiled during the alleged incident, which Williams says she now believes was coordinated and, quote, some kind of weird, twisted game. Trump denied Williams's allegations through his campaign at the time, which said in part, quote, it's obvious this fake story was contrived by Kamala Harris's campaign. And Stacey Williams is out front now to speak out for the first time since the uproar over Trump's handling of the Epstein case. Stacey, thank you so much for joining us tonight. As you know, Epstein is dominating the news once again, and his relationship with Trump is under scrutiny. While you were dating Epstein, can you tell us how close these two men were?
They were best friends. I dated Jeffrey for a period of more or less, I think about 4 or 5 months. And the only friend that he would mention every time we saw each other or had a phone conversation was Donald. And he would share a lot of anecdotes. I have plenty of anecdotes. And yeah, they were very close, and they were up to no good.
And how did Epstein talk about Trump? Sort of what was the quality of those anecdotes and how he described him?
Well, there was a time when he mentioned that he had to check in on him because he was unwell and very upset about something that had happened. I remember because he was late to pick me up, and he was explaining why he was late. They were just, it was such a long time ago, but it was just that was his bro, that was his wingman. It was clearly, I'd hear about Ghislaine and I'd hear about Jeffrey. And I met Ghislaine in his house. She would come wafting in and out, the home in New York. So he was clearly just someone that he talked about all the time. And again, I met Jeffrey the second time, and we started dating based on the reintroduction that happened at the Plaza Hotel at a Christmas party in 1992 that Donald Trump threw. And they were very, very close.
So let's talk about this incident, alleged incident in 1993, where you say that Trump groped you in front of Epstein. I do want to note that CNN has spoken to 3 friends of yours who confirmed that you told them about this alleged incident over past decades. Can you tell me more about what happened that day, and particularly how Trump and Epstein interacted?
Yeah, before I get into the details of what happened, which, obviously I told you guys and I've shared with multiple outlets, the specifics of the assault that happened, I want to point out that I was polygraphed before I did all this by one of the most renowned examiners in the world. Michael Wolff has hundreds of hours of interviews with Jeffrey Epstein where Jeffrey confirmed to Michael what the two of them did to me long before I came out and told you all of this. So those are 2 critical data points that you need to have, and now I'll walk you through what happened. I was dating Jeffrey. He was always talking about Donald. It was his bestie and everything. And he was joking about how Donald thought I was hot and Donald thinks I'm this or whatever, wants to talk to you. And he was telling me this as we were taking a walk down Fifth Avenue one day. And he said, let's stop in and see him at his offices. So we went up to his office in Trump Tower. And within a couple of minutes, Donald was outside of his door, and his hands were all over me. They were on my breasts, they were on my butt, they were on, my hips, up and down, while the two of them just kept having a normal conversation. I don't remember exactly what was in the conversation. Again, this was, we're talking 90, this is 93 now. It was something about, it was irrelevant. It was like, oh, Stacey's career's on fire. She just did Sports Illustrated again, blah, 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 blah. And they were back and forth, smiling and grinning and carrying on a conversation while Donald ran his hands all over me. And, when that happens in broad daylight in someone's office and an assistant's walking back and forth, you're in shock. If it happens in a dark alleyway, right, you defend yourself. But when it's hidden in its brazenness like that, which is Donald Trump's forte, you know, you go into shock. So I froze, and it was over and very quickly. It was a few minutes, and then we got back in the elevator, and Jeffrey's energy had changed. He was like seething. He was enraged. He wouldn't make eye contact with me. And then we got out on the street on Fifth Avenue, and he looked at me and he just started yelling at me, saying, "Why did you let him do that?" And he was so enraged. And then I remember thinking, like, why did I? I felt like I was coming back into my body at that moment, and I was confused.
Man, girl, please.
So that's the story of the assault.
And I do just want to note, Stacey, that Trump has denied these allegations, which you are well aware of. And I know at times you've referenced videos which we have not confirmed the existence of. But I know that you felt that this was coordinated later when you looked back on it. What was it that made you draw that conclusion?
Well, I was sort of known in the industry for being somewhat combative with you know, photographers who would expose themselves or do inappropriate things, or even guys who would touch or harass on the streets. And Jeffrey was aware of that. And I think he was excited. I think the gist in my mind, given what he knew and the way it played out, was, hey, you know, I'm going to deliver this person to you who's actually not going to let you get away with what you do. And I did, because I froze. Like I said, when it's hidden in its brazenness like that, you freeze. And, you know, he's a master of that. So, I mean, he talked about it, right? He talked about pussy grabbing on the Access Hollywood tape.
And tonight, if you're aware, President Trump has filed this libel lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal over its reporting that there was this note bearing Trump's name as a signature and an outline of a naked woman that was included in a 50th birthday album for Epstein in 2003, a note that also depicted an imaginary conversation between the two men. And part of it reads, quote, Donald saying, "We have certain things in common, Jeffrey. Jeffrey, yes, we do. Come to think of it, Donald, enigmas never age. Have you noticed that? Jeffrey, as a matter of fact, it was clear to me that the last time I saw you." And then finally, Donald, "A pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret." Trump called that letter fake. He said it was out of character for him because he never wrote a picture or drew a picture in his life. Wrote a picture, I think he said.
No,
it's not his kind of language. Based on your time with both men, does that sound out of character to you?
What, are you kidding me? I know what they were up to together. It happened to me. I was polygraphed. I have the post-assault postcard with a love note. So I have the receipts. Where are Donald Trump's receipts? Where are they? I know what they were up together, and I know what that means. It's very clear. It wasn't baking or fishing.
The fact that you opened your argument with, "I was dating Epstein." That's it. That's all I need to know. You were dating who everybody calls Jeffrey Epstein. I call him Epstein. So you start your argument with, "Well, when I was dating Epstein, he took me to Donald Trump's office. But before we got there, he told me that Donald Trump think I was beautiful and, you know, I don't know, attractive." What are you talking about? What are you? What did you do when you were young? What was your job, actually? I would like to know. Because if your then boyfriend was telling you about another guy being attracted to you while you were dating him, what in the world were y'all doing? What were you doing with Epstein in the first place? So you're dating Epstein, according to you, and then he told you about his friend, Donald Trump, and he took you there. And allegedly, Donald was touching you, and you froze. You froze, really? You froze? What made you freeze? Trump was what? Iceman? Trump was Iceman? Huh? That's why you froze? What? Because we would like to know why you froze. Every reasonable woman that everybody knows would put the guy in the right place immediately. You can't touch me like that. Get your filthy hands off my attractive body. You could start with that. You could start with that. But no, you didn't do that. You froze. Okay. That's that. You froze. All right, here we go. The Obama-Russia hoax.
Well, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard says she has identified, quote, overwhelming evidence to show how Obama-era officials manufactured the Trump-Russia collusion hoax after he was elected in 2016. Here is DNI Gabbard on what she found.
Over 100 documents that we released on Friday really detail and provide evidence of how this treasonous conspiracy was directed by President Obama just weeks before he was due to leave office, after President Trump had already gotten elected. Creating this piece of manufactured intelligence that claims that Russia had helped Donald Trump get elected contradicted every other assessment that had been made previously in the months leading up to the election that said exactly the opposite. So the effect of what President Obama and his senior national security team did was subvert the will of the American people, undermining our democratic republic, and enacting what would be essentially a years-long coup against President Trump, who was duly elected by the American people.
Wow, this is a lot. And the DOJ just received that referral from DNI Gabbard.
Yeah, so Tulsi Gabbard said that she was going to turn over the documents this morning. She did the official turnover. And so now it goes to the DOJ. We'll see what they find out. Let them do the investigation. Let them look into it, look at the accusations. I mean, look, this is something that happened nearly a decade ago. So certainly I think it would be maybe good for the American people to get more clarity and more information. Does it need to go beyond that? Hard to say, especially on the legal side. But the other thing I thought about with all of this is, you know, if you're the president of the United States today, you're in your second term. You won. Despite what maybe Obama or Hillary Clinton or anybody else that was associated with this hoax, whatever they were responsible for or did, you won again, term 2. And we're now at the 6-month mark for Donald Trump. And look how great the stock market is doing. The border is closed. So maybe look at that instead.
Nicole, Congressman Pat Fallon
Okay, maybe
told me
look at
last
that
hour,
instead.
Republican congressman, that if there was something that was law-breaking here, that there should be accountability because this is so problematic. And he seems to think he couldn't release everything that he's already seen. Well, no one can at this point, but he said as this becomes more public, you'll see what I'm talking about.
And I agree with him 100% because, again, if you broke the law, if they actually did participate in this, I do believe in accountability. And I do believe that there should be tangible consequences for this type of behavior because what this does is it's not just the crime that was committed allegedly. It's that you destroy the trust of these intel agencies, of these law enforcement agencies, the CIA, the FBI, all of these agencies involved in that. And again, I was at the FBI in 2016, and I can tell you that this was the first time that I really felt, wow, the FBI has been politicized. And I was down in FBI Miami. Oh, yeah. It was July 5th of 2016 when Jim Comey came out and said no reasonable prosecutor will charge Hillary Clinton. I will never forget that moment. And I'm down in FBI Miami working violent crime. Literally, the next day, I was given a case of a child who had been raped by her biological father. And we're trying to work real cases in Miami. In the meantime, we're hearing about this nonsense going on in D.C., just trying to ignore it. We're like, look, that's not our problem. That's the political side of things. So again, going back to the original point, I do believe that there should be consequences because not only does it destroy the trust of the American people, it destroyed the trust of FBI agents. We're like, what is going on in my agency? This is my director. Can I trust my FBI director? And I can tell you that the FBI has never recovered since, in my opinion, because of the destructive behavior of James Comey and others that may have been involved, Brennan, Clapper, others in the intel agencies. And, you know, let's let them see what they've got. They've given the information to Attorney General Pam Bondi, Kash Patel. Let them follow the evidence. If a crime was committed, you know what they always say? No one is above the law. And you know what? You're not either. And so let's see what happens. Follow the evidence.
There you go, Griff.
Well, look, I think that to Nicole's point, accountability is the goal of this. And over the weekend, we interviewed on Fox & Friends, Tulsi Gabbard as well on Saturday. And it struck me that she's making the case that, look, this is a manipulated and politicized effort to change the narrative, to usurp Donald Trump's election, and that every American across bipartisan lines should care about accountability. And she said that ultimately that accountability goes all the way to the top, to former President Barack Obama. Now, I think to Cheryl's point, does this lead to actual charges? I don't know. I do think, Harris, one thing that might be in the cards to come down the pike is some congressional hearings in seeing people like Comey, like Brennan, like Clapper, like Susan Rice being called before Congress, because you would think that if there are, quote, charges brought, it's because of statements they made that were inconsistent with what was actually done according to these documents.
Yeah. Can they plead the fifth, like what we've seen here recently?
We saw an awful lot of that out of the inner circle to Biden's aides.
I don't know how much more you'll get. You know, I guess my kind of top-down concern has to do with how far back this went if ex-President Obama was involved. I mean, they would have been working against Donald Trump to help Hillary win, to what else? What could have been the reason for all of that?
Because they wanted to stay in control, and Donald Trump was operating so far outside the establishment that I think to a lot of people whom many would consider the deep state, he was uncontrollable. He was such an unknown quantity that they were terrified that he would come in and upend the establishment. And, you know, it's like in many ways, he has. In many ways, he has destroyed a lot of norms that people didn't realize were detrimental to this country. And I understand why DNI Gabbard has a vested interest here, because if you remember, this is something that Hillary Clinton was pushing long after she lost the 2016 election. And she said with great certainty that Tulsi Gabbard is a Russian asset. She used the term Russian asset.
Yes, she did.
And then, you know, Tulsi Gabbard was taken aside by TSA and, you know, customs and questioned, and she was on a list and she didn't know how she got there. Well, now she's DNI, and she'll get to the bottom of some of her personal questions, but also make sure this never happens again with any president, with any administration, with any level of the intelligence agencies who were all in collusion with each other. And the Washington Post and New York Times needs to give their Pulitzers back with this sham reporting they did.
Wow. You have a last quick word.
Well, I was going to say that there's a great piece this morning in the opinion section, foxnews.com, written by our colleague Greg Jarrett, who wrote a book about all of this. And he goes through a lot of the reasons why the legal bar might be really high. So let's see what the DOJ comes up with. But he does kind of lay out the case of where this could or could not go, depending on what the law is.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me.
Right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning into the live show. God bless you. This has been an awesome experience. Let's close it out with Mark Levin on here. Here we go. And you are still tuned into the Genesis Show. So stay united, guys. Stay united.
Hello, America. I'm Mark Levin, and this is Life, Liberty, and Levin Sunday. Two great guests, Speaker Mike Johnson and General Jack Keane. And we'll get to them in a moment. I want to build a little bit on what I discussed with you last night on Saturday, Life, Liberty, and Levin. This issue of immigration and its impact on the nation. First, I want to quote Aristotle to you. Who's Aristotle? Aristotle is probably one of the greatest geniuses to ever live. And so much of philosophy and thinking and scholarship is built on what Aristotle wrote so long ago. When it comes to immigration, he said a radical change in the character of the citizens would be tantamount to regime change, just as surely as a revolution in its political principles. I've been talking about the left, the Democrat Party, using immigration for revolution. That is to fundamentally alter our nation. That's exactly what they're doing. Government is obliged to limit immigration to the most likely to improve and contribute to the well-being of our civil society. I think we forget the purpose of immigration. The purpose of immigration is to serve the citizenry of the United States, not to change the citizenry of the United States, not to change the United States, but to serve the purposes of the current citizenry of the United States. That's important. Preservation of the nation's culture, the nation's mores and language and traditions and customs that make possible a harmonious community of citizens. Assimilation is key. None of this is going on in America right now. None of it has gone on in America in the last several decades. President Trump is trying to fix that. I want you to look at your Declaration of Independence. It always has such sound thinking, even though it's short and sweet. It says in part, to secure these unalienable rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. It is the right of the people to alter or abolish, that is, the government, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its power in such form as to them shall seem to affect their safety and happiness. We're the sovereign. You don't get to change the sovereign. You don't get to rule against the sovereign. You don't get to impose your will on the sovereign in any form, let alone through immigration. Have we, the governed, we, the people, consented to mass migration that's taking place? No. We voted for a president, and we have to oppose what's taking place. He's doing exactly that. And we oppose this mass migration that's been imposed on us by the Democrats, Biden, and their ilk. Also, do you feel safer and happier as a result of mass migration, mass illegal immigration? That's your Declaration of Independence. That's the basis of what our country is supposed to be. So I thought what I'd do is let you know that in past generations, in fact, there have been laws passed, the basic laws, the Immigration and Nationalization Act, really the most basic aspect of it passed in 1952 and amended since then. It's Title IX of the U.S. Code. There's law after law, provision after provision, section after section on how immigration is supposed to be conducted, but you wouldn't know it the way the Democrats and the media speak. And it is that law that President Trump and his administration are using and trying to use to get us back to where immigration is supposed to be. For example, 8 U.S. Code, Section 1325, proper entry by aliens. Now, it's a long provision, but let me just read this part. In proper time or place, avoidance of examination or inspection, misrepresentation and concealment of facts. Any alien who, 1, enters or attempts to enter the United States at any time or place other than as designated by immigration officers, or 2, eludes examination or inspection by immigration officers, or 3, attempts to enter or obtains entry to the United States by a willfully false or misleading representation or the willful concealment of a material fact, shall, for the first commission of any such offense, in other words, it's a crime to come in here and illegally, be fined under Title 18 or imprisoned not more than 6 months, or both. And for a subsequent commission of any such offense, you do it twice or more, be fined under Title 18 or imprisoned not more than 2 years, or both. So people say, well, it's just a misdemeanor, it's no big deal. You come into this country illegally, it's a crime. And you're supposed to do time or be deported. It doesn't say, as the Democrats say, well, they're contributing to our society, they're picking lettuce, they're building up. They're here illegally. The law says they go. That's the law. Let's look at 8 U.S. Code, Section 1227, deportable aliens. Who's deportable? The people I just told you, just coming here illegally. Any alien in and admitted to the United States shall, upon the order of the Attorney General, be removed if the alien is within one or more of the following classes or deportable aliens. And he's delegated that. And obviously now it's been delegated. You have DHS and so forth. Inadmissible at time of entry or of adjustment of status or violate status. Inadmissible. You come in here illegally, you're out. You're a deportable alien. Inadmissible. Present in violation of the law. If you've been here in violation of law, you're deportable. Violated non-immigrant status or condition of entry. Violators of condition of entry. Okay, you come in and there's certain conditions you have to meet. You violate those conditions, you are deportable. It's very general. It's a very powerful law in the hands of our government to control immigration, to control the aliens who come here. In general, any alien who knowingly has encouraged, induced, assisted, abetted, or aided any other alien to enter or to try to enter the United States in violation of the law is deportable. It goes on. Marriage fraud. If you get married for the purpose of becoming a citizen, you can be deported. Wow. crimes of moral turpitude. In other words, if you expose yourself, if you violate a little kid, if you commit rape, you're out of here, period. Aggravated felony. Alien convicted of an aggravated felony at any time after admission is deportable. High-speed flight, driving fast to avoid an officer, you're deportable. Failure to register as a sex offender, you're deportable. Using controlled substances, violating our drug laws, you're deportable. You're a drug abuser and addict, you're deportable. Certain firearm offenses, you're deportable. And it goes on and on. Miscellaneous crimes, espionage, sabotage, treason, sedition. You know, all those wonderful River to the Sea folks who are busy protesting to overthrow the United States. Deportable. Crimes of domestic violence. Remember that guy, the MS-13 guy that was loved by the Democrats a few weeks ago? Stalking or violation of protection order. Crimes against children. Deportable. You're out of here. Violators of protective orders. Deportable. Trafficking in people. Deportable. Failure to register or falsification of documents. Deportable. And the list goes on. But you wouldn't know that following the press in this country, would you? The list of deportable offenses is long, very long. And you don't have to have committed a heinous crime, although that's certainly a deportable offense. So when you hear Democrats say, good Lord, they're just working here and doing their job, but you're here illegally, you're deportable. Exercise of power by immigration officers, you know, Border Patrol, ICE, people like that. 287.5, power and authority to interrogate and administer oaths. Any immigration officer is hereby authorized and designated to exercise anywhere in or outside the United States the power conferred by Congress, by federal law, Section 287A1, the act to interrogate without warrant any alien or person believed to be an alien concerning his or her right to be or to remain in the United States. You don't have a warrant. Well, in 99% of the cases, you don't need a warrant. Why? Because you have a federal law. Section 287B of the Act, to administer oaths and to take and consider evidence concerning the privilege of any person to enter, re-enter, pass through, or reside in the United States, or concerning any matter which is material or relevant to the enforcement of the Act and the administration of the immigration and naturalization functions of the Department. So Department personnel, ICE, Border Patrol, others, have enormous law enforcement authority to investigate, to question, to apprehend, to arrest, without going to a federal judge to get a warrant. People, hey, what about due process? You morons in Congress, this is your law. This has been the law for over 70 years, passed by Republicans and Democrats and signed by Republican and Democrat presidents. Power and authority to arrests of aliens under Section 287A2. Border Patrol agents can arrest. Air and Marine agents can arrest. Special agents can arrest. Deportation officers can arrest. ICE officers can arrest. And so forth and so on. Wow. Arrests of persons under Section 287A4 of the Act for felonies. Same individuals can arrest. And it goes on and on and on. Did you know that? No, you didn't know it because the media doesn't report it to you. And if anything, the demagogues, the politicians lie to you about this. What happens if you assault or resist a federal officer? You see what's going on in LA? You see what goes on in New York? You see what goes on in these cities? You see congressmen literally pushing, assaulting ICE officers? Let me tell you something. You don't actually have to physically touch, according to federal law, passed by Congresses, signed by presidents. You don't have to actually touch a federal law enforcement official to be held criminally liable. The only issue there is whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony. Federal law imposes serious consequences for those who assault, resist, or interfere with federal officers and employees. 18 U.S.C. 111. These offenses range from minor altercations to violent attacks, with penalties varying based on severity. The statute protects individuals performing official duties, including law enforcement agents, judges, and other governmental personnel. 18 U.S.C. 111 criminalizes a broad range of conduct against federal officers and employees engaged in official duties. It covers physical assaults, resistance, intimidation, interference, even nonviolent obstruction, Democrats, such as refusing to comply with lawful orders or blocking an officer's movement, can lead to prosecution. Goes on, physical assaults can range from minor contact, like pushing or grabbing, to violent attacks involving weapons or serious bodily harm. The law does not require injury for charges to be filed. Any intentional, forceful act against a federal officer is sufficient for a felony. Threats and intimidation, even without physical contact, may also constitute a violation, a felony, if they place the officer in reasonable fear of harm. In United States versus Fiola, 1975, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that a defendant can be convicted under this law even if the defendant is unaware that the victim was a federal officer, reinforcing the statute's protective intent. Let's look at felony violations involving bodily injury or dangerous weapon, bringing significantly harsher penalties. An assault resulting in bodily injury can lead to a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison. Cases involving a dangerous weapon or an attempt to inflict serious harm can result in similar sentencing outcomes. This is federal law. Federal law. The Democrat Party militia that's out there, what they've been doing in LA, at the encouragement, at the urging of the mayor of LA, the governor of California, going around calling these ICE agents all kinds of horrific names, encouraging people to oppose these ICE agents, encouraging people to undermine our immigration laws. The President of the United States is not only within his authority, according to our own history, is obligated to back up his ICE officers, whether it's the National Guard, whether it's regular military, whether it's the United States Marines, or whatever it is. Whatever it is. This is law enforcement. Now, this is the enforcement side that the Democrats are trying to destroy. They want you to believe nobody should be deported. Or they'll say something like, they're actually deporting people who are law-abiding. Well, how are they law-abiding if they're here illegally? Or they're actually deporting people who provide us with services. So they have 1,000 excuses. I also like the one, they're actually going at the Home Depot, the 7-Eleven. They're going into community centers. They're going into restaurants. They're going into churches. They're going... In other words, you're not allowed to go anywhere to find the illegal aliens. Then we have a nut judge out in LA who says it's racist because they're targeting certain racial communities. No, they're not. They're going into certain communities. Race is not a factor, even though the community might, say, be a Haitian community or a Central American community or a God knows what community. They're going to enforce the law in whatever community the community is. So this is the back end of what the Democrats have done and what they're doing. They don't want enforcement, but they don't want immigration laws at all. We suffered through the Biden regime, and what took place during the Biden regime, the Biden regime violated virtually every aspect of our federal immigration laws. They used the parole system to bring in as many illegal aliens as they could. They didn't vet people. They offered people the opportunity to have work visas, even though they were here illegally. I can go down the line, resulting in millions and millions of people coming here who've never been vetted. We don't know who they are. We don't know where they are. And they're roaming the countryside. And that includes, obviously, criminals. Why wouldn't they come? Fentanyl has poured over our borders. Illegal weapons have poured over our borders. You've got sex trafficking. We don't even know how many women have been sold into pornography and sex trafficking. We have 320,000 missing unaccompanied minors. The administration is trying to find as many as they can. This is the inhumanity of open borders. This is the inhumanity of not enforcing our immigration laws. And the Democrats, who do they defend? Khalil, who's pushing for the overthrow of our country, who's scaring the hell out of Jewish students at Columbia University. Poor Khalil. Or this other guy, Garcia, out of Maryland. MS-13, trafficking, and, of course, a wife beater. That's who they hold up. They don't want anyone deported. They don't want any security at the border for the reasons I said last night on this program. This is about changing the American citizenry. This is about empowering the Democrat Party, one-party rule, and so forth and so on. And you'll remember, about a year ago, and I'm citing National Review, the numbers that came out, which was this: 662,000 illegal aliens who entered had a criminal conviction. This is during the Biden regime, or awaiting a verdict in a criminal case. 13,000 convicted murders, more than 15,000 convicted of sexual assaults, more than 2,500 convicted of kidnapping, more than 62,000 convicted of other types of assault. Wow. I don't think they're picking our lettuce, do you? As of July 2024, the 662,000 illegal immigrants with the criminal history, 435,000 and change are convicted criminals, 226,000 and change illegal immigrants face pending criminal charges in the United States. Among those not in ICE detention, 425,000 and change convicted criminals, 222,000 with pending criminal charges. We have 14,000 were convicted of burglary, 13,000 convicted of homicide, as I just mentioned, an additional 2,500 kidnapping convictions, 15,800 sexual assault convictions. But don't worry, they're future Democrats. That's the point. They're going to have children who become citizens and their birthright citizenship. They'll be Democrats too. The Democrat Party is all in, baby. They're all in. So I wanted you to know at least a summary understanding that there are a lot of laws out there that support what President Trump is doing, that support our ICE agents and our Border Patrol. And it's the Democrat Party that has eviscerated our laws in terms of who can come, how they can come, when they can come, and are eviscerating or trying to our laws in terms of enforcing the immigration laws. It is they and their judges who are undermining the Constitution and the rule of law and the reason for this country, the Declaration of Independence. It is they who are doing it.
Hey, Sean Hannity here.
All right. Thank you for tuning in to the live show. God bless you for being here. God bless you guys. God is the greatest. Instead of looking for perfection, seek for consistency. Never, ever give up on yourself. Never give up on your dreams. Never give up on God. Believe in yourself. Believe in your dreams. And believe in Almighty God. God is the greatest. And America is the greatest nation on the face of the earth. I got to give a shout out to our esteemed member. Shout out to Dr. Luke, the GOAT. Shout out to Ellie. Shout out to Ringmaster. Shout out to Ingraham. Shout out to Sandra. God bless you, members. Of course, I got to give a shout out to our moderators. Shout out to Corey B. Shout out to Zyros Guarded. Who else, man? I think it's only Corey B that's in here right now. And of course, I got to give a shout out to people who are just viewing. Shout out to Johnny5. Johnny5, God bless you. Shout out to CRXR, God bless you. Thank you for tuning in, CRXR. Who else, man? Everybody, God bless you. If you need a shout out, just put it in the comment section, man. Maybe I could give you a shout out. Maybe. Okay. I got to give a shout out to law enforcement. I got to give a shout out to the veterans. I got to give a shout out to the military personnel. Thank you for your service. Shout out to Ice, baby. Shout out to the 45th, now the 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. Shout out to every patriot out there rooting for America, praying for America, fighting for America, and just in love with the United States. Shout out to you guys. No matter what you're going through right now, life is hard. Life is very hard, but stay true to yourself. Fight for your dreams. Do not give up. You just never know what people are going through. So be kind to one another, okay? Be kind, all right? Life is not just about politics, okay? Go outside, meet new people, shake hands, go to the park, just enjoy life, okay? Some people are in the hospital right now. Some people are somewhere they cannot go outside, enjoy life. Some people can't even eat. Some people can't walk, okay? So if you can do those things, be thankful to God. Be grateful for life, all right? Be grateful that you are here. Enjoy your time here, all right? Stop complaining. Don't be a pessimist. Be an optimist, okay? You're ready to enjoy and, be open to new outcomes and be open to new ideas, okay? New experiences, all right? That's what America stands for, all right? Go out there and enjoy life, all right? It is your boy Genesis. Shout out to the fathers, of course, and shout out to the mothers as well. And, enjoy life. That's all I can tell y'all. Enjoy life, all right? And it's country first. It's not parties first. It is country first, all right? America first before you are a Republican or a Democrat or independent, all right? Doesn't matter, but you are America first. So country before party. It is your boy Genesis, and you are currently tuned into the Genesis Show. We will be back. God bless you guys. See you soon.